Chapter 145. Young E was stunned by Murphy's question and didn't quite know how to answer. Later on, even he himself felt that the word hypocritical was too much. He had blurted it out at that time, so what reason could there be? Young E was speechless and could only tell her the story of that female celebrity. He then said honestly, "Our relationship was actually an accident and a mistake. Of course I wouldn't not take care of Shishi because she's my daughter. It's just that. I don't want our previous relationship to be based on Shishi, and I don't want you to be with me because you want to give Shishi a home." Murphy felt even more wronged after hearing what he said. She bit her lower lip and asked angrily, "Are we together? When did we get together?" Young E didn't know how to answer her again. Murphy didn't intend to wait for Young E's answer. She raised her head and looked at Young E proudly and said, "Humph, Young E, I admit that I've had some feelings for you recently, but please don't think too highly of yourself, okay? I'm not so petty as to sacrifice my feelings for you just for Cece." In any case, his sister was once a big star who was famous all over the country. In terms of status, the difference between Murphy and Young E was too big. Only Young E, who still had the memories of his previous life, was so narcissistic that he thought that a famous celebrity would throw herself at him. Just now, your analysis of Ah Ling's story was right. Girls do need their father's love. So after I met you, I still hoped that you could spend time with Shishi, so I tried my best to send Shishi over for 2 days every week. Young E nodded. Murphy was right. That was the arrangement at that time. And when Murphy wasn't busy, she couldn't bear to let Shishi stay at her father's house for a moment longer. Murphy raised her chin and said stubbornly, "But that doesn't mean that I have any feelings for you. I can live well on my own and raise Shishi. I can even find another man who will be good to me and Shishi in the future. I don't need to be angry at you." "How can that be?" Young E was anxious. He paused and said, "I mean, how can that be? He's not Shishi's father. How can he be good to Shishi? Can he be as good as me? You are the one who is not good. You are an asshole who annoys people all day long." Mo Fei turned her head away angrily. How could Young E tell if Murphy was deliberately trying to anger him? Now when he thought of Mo Fei saying that she wanted to find another man, he felt very uncomfortable in his heart. When he thought that Cece was going to call someone else daddy, he panicked. "No, didn't you just say that you have a good impression of me?" Murphy bit her lower lip and refused to admit it. Did I say that?" "You did." Young E thought that she had forgotten. He nodded and said, "You just said that you admit that you have feelings for me recently." "I don't want to hear it, I don't want to hear it." Murphy covered her ears and shook her head. Young E was speechless. After a while, Murphy turned her head and didn't want to look at Young E. Then she said in a very low voice, almost inaudible, "It's just that I have feelings for you recently. Who asked you to be so good to me? But now..." Murphy didn't know what was going on now. She felt that Young E was so bad and as fierce as before. It was best that she didn't have any feelings for him. Young E stood there stupidly and didn't say anything. He actually heard what Murphy said. His ears were too sensitive, so he heard it clearly. But after listening to it, he suddenly came to an unexpected conclusion from the information in the middle. Murphy really didn't have feelings for him in the past. Maybe she was only willing to interact with Young E because she wanted Shishi to be cared for by her father. She wouldn't have stopped interacting with him after being angered by Young E so many times. But Murphy had feelings for him now because Young E had changed and was good to her. So, the person that Murphy likes is me? And not the other me. After coming to this conclusion, Young E didn't know whether he should be happy or not. Or should he be happy? Or should he be complacent and get carried away? He was Young E, but it could also be said that he wasn't Young E. The original Young E could be said to be him, but it could also be said that he wasn't him. He was the current Young E. Murphy liked the current him, so he was better than the original him. After a series of logic, Young E was a little confused by himself. Anyway, the most important thing was that Mo Fei had a good impression of him. Young E didn't say anything. Murphy finally couldn't help but turn her head. Her gaze fell on Young-E, who couldn't help but let out a silly smile. Murphy suddenly pursed her lips. She was angry and amused at the same time. "You're so stupid. What are you talking about? Look at how proud he is. I don't want you to be with other people." In front of Murphy, Young-E forgot his original free and easy manner. He actually stuttered and said, Because I care." "Why?" Murphy retorted. Because you're Shishi's mother." Young-E said. Wrong answer." Murphy turned her head and didn't want to talk to him. But at this time, Young-E didn't know why, but he suddenly seemed to be enlightened. After stuttering for a while, he blurted out, "And because I like you." As soon as he said this, Young-E felt as if a string had been pulled in his heart. He suddenly understood how he felt about Mo-Fei. Mo-Fei was dumbfounded this time. She turned her head and stared at Young-E blankly. Although she looked forward to it, she never thought that Young-E would reveal his feelings at this time. "I like you, I like your songs, I like your flower arrangement, I like your smile, and I like to sing with you." Since Young-E started, he couldn't stop. In this life, he was already an ordinary person, living an ordinary life. Why should he be afraid of commitment and feelings? Why not be brave enough to pursue what he loved? Young-E figured it out. Murphy pursed her lips. Her eyes were a little red, but she didn't know what to do. This bastard. How could she be moved by him? She clearly said that she would ignore him. "Mom. Papa is missing. Shishi is so scared." Shishi's voice suddenly sounded at the door. The little girl's timid voice immediately interrupted the ambiguous and awkward atmosphere between Young-E and Murphy. In the end, his daughter was more important. Murphy hurriedly got out of bed, and Young-E almost walked to the door at the same time. Murphy opened the door and picked up the restless Shishi. "Hey, why is Papa here?" When Shishi saw her father, she was surprised at first, but then she immediately opened her eyes wide in confusion. Just now, her father went to the balcony and disappeared. Shishi was so scared. But why would Papa appear in Mom's room? Shishi couldn't understand. Murphy glared at Young-E and said to her daughter, "Your Papa is very bad. He left Shishi outside. Let's not talk to her, okay?" "Yes, Papa is very bad." Shishi thought about her worries just now, pouted her small mouth, and shared her mother's hatred of the enemy. Young-E smiled helplessly and brought Shishi out with Murphy. No matter what, with their daughter here, no matter how big the conflict between the two of them was, they couldn't make a scene. However, Murphy saw that he was still laughing and felt unhappy. She secretly stretched out her leg to kick him. "What are you laughing at? Don't laugh." "Then you're not allowed to do that." Young-E couldn't say it too clearly in front of his daughter. Why should I?" Murphy raised her chin and said a little proudly, "You haven't pursued me. Do you think that if you say you like me, I can't be with anyone else and have to be with you obediently? Then I want to pursue you." "What?" "Murphy." Young-E was very serious, as if he was taking an oath to join the party. He almost raised his fist. "I said I want to pursue you, so that you can be with me in the future." Okay. She said happily, trying to destroy the atmosphere. She also wants to pursue Mom, so that Mom, Papa, and Shishi can be together forever. Chapter 146. Changzi was a little worried recently, not because of the lack of money, but because the authors under his management, especially Young-E, had achieved excellent results in the past few months, which also made his performance soar. Because of this, the leader also increased his salary and bonus. His worry was not because he was urged to get married. Changzi was used to being urged by his family to go on blind dates and get married. However, during this time his family did not care about him, so Changzi was free. He was worried because of Young-E. This restless author usually could not find him, and he did not take care of his own book review section. However, every time he was found, nothing good would happen. For example, this time Young-E actually planned to open 2 books. "You want to publish a new book?" Changzi was stunned and asked, "Why?" Changzi still remembered Yang Yi's answer very clearly. "Because I have no money." At that time, Changzi was in a bad mood. How could he say that he had no money in front of a poor person? Changzi clearly remembered Yang Yi's payment list last month, and the number on it was 7 digits. Of course, Changzi could not mock his own author. He could only persuade Yang Yi with a bitter smile, telling him that opening 2 books would affect the quality of the book, and earnestly persuade Yang Yi to give up the idea. However, when he said these words, Changzi knew that it was useless. Sure enough, how could he persuade Yang Yi when he decided on something? Moreover, Changzi was persuaded by Yang Yi. Yang Yi did not talk much with Changzi on Sins at all. He directly sent a few drafts. After Changzi read them, he could not help but be addicted to the criminal world that Yang Yi had created. "Is it good?" Wu Yubin from the technical department asked Changzi. "Good," Changzi added. "It's better than remaining sin." "Is it that bad?" Wu Yubin asked in surprise. "It's true. I feel that if I don't let Yang Yi write this novel, I'll be committing a crime." When Changzi thought of the plot, he felt itchy in his heart. "So let him upload it quickly. I also want to catch up. No, I have to ask him to send me the rest of the plot first. I have to help him correct the mistakes, if there are any." Wu Yubin smiled and said, "All right, then why are you looking for me? Don't tell me you want me to suffer as much as you do." "How could that be? Although I do want you to fall into my trap, haha." Changzi explained. "It's like this. Yang Yi said that his book needs to be accompanied by illustrations, and he will draw the pictures. But now we can't mix pictures in the published chapters on the website. See if there's anything you can do to help." "There's even an illustration." Wu Yubin was surprised. Could he be writing a light novel? No, it's a crime novel. It's very serious. But there are some places that can't be described with words alone. Illustrations are needed to help convey some information. Changzi said. "So that's how it is." Did the managing editor and the others agree? Wu Yubin asked. "It's not a big technical problem. Originally, there were some other examples on the forum that could give us some code that we can copy. Just need some time to perfect and test it. Huda has already approved it," Changzi said. "Is 7 days enough? We're going to put it on the shelves on September 1st. It just so happens that we have more than a week to arrange for publicity." "No problem." Wu Yubin nodded. "Fatty, come here quickly." Guazi, who was drinking water under the shade of a tree, heard the call. He quivered and quickly jumped up. His footsteps were hurried, and he trotted to the side of the young man who liked to have a pen in his ear. "Brother Bin, hello. Director Wan, hello," Guazi said with a smile. His hands were not idle as he deftly took out a pack of good cigarettes and handed it to them. Guazi did not smoke, but after mingling for a while, he still knew a lot of routines. For example, he would buy 2 packs of cigarettes, one expensive and one cheap, and put them in his 2 pockets. The middle-aged man in the straw hat that Guazi called Director Wan was actually not on the list of directors. At most, he was an assistant director who only helped with some unimportant scenes. He was considered a disciple that Chen Fengchen had nurtured, but his ability was still lacking. Chen Fengchen still gave most of the supporting work to his assistant director. But for the extras who had no contact with big directors, Director Wan was the real big boss. Director Wan looked up at Guazi. He was quite satisfied with Guazi's comically fat appearance and said, "Big Bin just recommended you to me. Try this role. You have these 2 lines. General, the enemy is here, and I've lost my knife. Take this script and read it. Remember the lines." There were lines. This was the treatment of a special actor. Guazi was delighted as he hurriedly thanked Director Wan and Brother Bin. Director Wan was busy. He waved his hand and asked Guazi and Big Bin to leave. He needed to clear the set for filming. Big Bin walked a few steps and said to Guazi with deep meaning, Fatty, when you become famous in the future, don't forget my help. How can I forget? Guazi smiled. Big Bin, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Tonight, I'll treat you and Director Ruan to Ziran Village. Ziran Village was actually a barbecue stall. It wasn't considered high class, but it suited Guazi's background. Big Bin often went there, but it was always treated by extras. Big Bin was very satisfied with Guazi's tactfulness. He nodded and said, "Just treat me. Director Ruan doesn't care about this. Also, if you invite him to Ziran Village, he won't be interested." After getting rid of Big Bin, Guazi couldn't wait to sit under the shade of the tree and carefully read the script. Although he had mixed around with these extras for a few days and learned a lot of fake tricks, Guazi didn't forget his original intention. He wanted to be a big actor, a big star. He had to seize the opportunity and work hard to hone his acting skills. Xiao Guo seems to be rich. A few of the village brothers who were close to him didn't dare to disturb Guazi and started to whisper, "Should be." He even got the script. "It should be a big role." "What big role?" "Just a small extra with 2 lines. Guazi heard this and didn't pretend to be cold. Instead, he raised his head and smiled at his brothers as usual. "If it has lines, it's not a small extra. It's a special actor." "That's right. It can earn us a few days' worth of money in a day. But special actors don't get special actors every day. It's still more stable for us extras. Look at how useless you are." The village brothers didn't disturb Guazi anymore. They lowered their voices and continued to talk. "All right. Have you heard? It seems that the big director isn't around these few days. He handed everything over to the assistant director. That's why there are so many things with the surname Ruan. Where did he go? Could it be that he was sick? Old people get sick easily. Right. Who said he's sick? Don't spread rumors. I heard that he's on a business trip and isn't filming. How did you get the news so fast? You even know about the big director." "That's because I learned it from Xiao Guo. I have to learn how to eavesdrop. Those actors are always gossiping." A short village brother with a thick accent mumbled, "You guys follow Xiao Guo all day. Why haven't you guys improved at all? Yo Gungsha is so hardworking. I'm afraid you're going to be a special actor too." There were always people who didn't work hard and were always jealous of others. Chapter 147. Yang Yi's decision to pursue Murphy wasn't just for show. He wasn't usually cold, but he was also like a blockhead who wouldn't take the initiative. However, when he tried hard to do something, his tricks were endless. Murphy woke up in the morning to practice her voice with Yang Yi as promised. However, when she finished washing up and was about to pour herself a glass of water, she suddenly realized that on the coffee table in the living room, there were 2 beautiful flowers next to her cup. If they were real flowers, Murphy wouldn't be so surprised. However, they weren't real flowers. Murphy looked at them carefully and realized that they were carved from fresh carrots. The flower buds had not fully bloomed yet, but they were delicate and beautiful. Of course, after being surprised and slightly touched, Murphy couldn't help but laugh. This guy even had obsessive-compulsive disorder when it came to carving flowers. 1 flower wasn't enough. There had to be 2 symmetrical flowers, and the 2 flowers had to be carved exactly the same. She was surprised from time to time. During lunch, Yang Yi fried a heart-shaped egg, which was considered a small scene. However, when Yang Yi brought out a dish with only 2 symmetrical chicken wings and lettuce, Murphy was really surprised. Yang Yi's culinary skills were unquestionable. The chicken wings were crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. The skin was also drizzled with thick tomato soup. The soup was sparkling like amber, making it very appetizing. "This dish is called flying wing to wing," Yang Yi explained seriously. Wing is Yang Yi's yi, and flying is Murphy's fei. The chicken wings are marinated with honey and other seasonings to ensure that the sweetness seeps into the bones. After they are fried, they are drizzled with sour tomato juice. It's sweet and sour, and it symbolizes the beautiful taste of love. He really revealed his feelings to Murphy in front of Shi. Of course, Shi couldn't understand the first part of the sentence. She only heard that the chicken wings were sweet and sour. She started drooling. Murphy, on the other hand, listened to the front and back of the story. At first, she felt touched and sweet in her heart, but when she heard Yang Yi's explanation of wing is Yang Yi's E, and fei is Murphy's fei, she couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. She had made up her mind to treat Yang Yi harshly for the past few days, but when she was with him, she couldn't help but laugh. Her previous indifference was gone. This guy was really... If he wasn't as dumb as a wooden man, he would be so corny. I want chicken wings. She stared eagerly at her favorite chicken wings. After her father finished his introduction, she couldn't wait to start yelling. She didn't care about love at all, just thinking about the sweet and sour taste. Only what was in the mouth and stomach was true love. However, there were only 2 chicken wings. How were they going to split them? As the saying goes, flying wing to wing, Yang Yi and Murphy should each have one. But there was no other way. Shi, the third wheel, was here, so the romance had to be discounted. Yang Yi didn't care. He picked up a chicken wing for his daughter. This chicken wing wasn't just a chicken wing, but also included the wingtip and the chicken shoulder. The little girl got what she wanted, so she happily held it in her hands and gnawed on it. As for the remaining chicken wing, Yang Yi naturally gave it to Murphy. He didn't care if he ate it or not. In any case, he had already conveyed his intention to Murphy. "Are you stupid?" Murphy said to Yang Yi angrily. "Why didn't you make an extra chicken wing? You clearly know that there are 3 people in the house." 3 meanings are wrong, Yang Yi explained. "Then why didn't you take a plate and put the remaining one aside first, and bring it up when it's time to eat?" Murphy was really speechless at this late-stage OCD patient. 3 is not enough. Shi can eat too. Shi ate at the side until her face was stained with red tomato juice, probably from the chicken wing tip. When she heard the conversation between her parents, she couldn't help but stop and say with her mouth full. Yang Yi just chuckled and didn't talk back. Murphy wasn't in a hurry to eat like Shi. She hesitated for a moment, but still broke the chicken wing and put the chicken shoulder into Yang Yi's bowl. Then her face was a little red, but she pretended not to care and said, "Look at you, you worked hard. I'll share some with you, humph." In the afternoon, Murphy wanted to play the piano, so the family went downstairs to the coffee shop. Yang Yi wiped the bar counter, washed all the utensils, made milk for Shi, and made coffee for Murphy. Murphy played a song, and under Shi's yelling, she held the little girl in her arms and taught her how to play the piano. Of course, Shi's small arms and hands were definitely not able to play the piano. She was still stuck between 1 finger and 2 finger zen. 2 finger zen referred to the use of the left index finger. So Murphy played the song slowly, and from time to time, she would let Shi press a few notes. It was almost like a child playing, but she wanted to improve Shi's interest in playing the piano. Yang Yi originally only drank plain coffee without sugar or milk, but this didn't mean that he didn't know how to make other kinds of coffee. Today, when he saw the milk for Shi, he suddenly had an idea. He wanted to show Murphy a cappuccino. Of course, this process was a bit complicated. After all, he had to prepare milk bubbles. These milk bubbles needed to be made with fresh milk that had been refrigerated as the raw material. After beating, heating, and other processes, they had to be made. Fortunately, Murphy and Shi had a lot of fun. Although the little girl was only responsible for pressing 2 keys according to her mother's instructions, she felt that she had contributed to the beautiful melody played. Shi couldn't stop giggling. Her bell-like laughter seemed to add a chord to the music. After the milk bubbles and milk were ready, Yang Yi began to draw the flowers. He hadn't done it for a long time, and Yang Yi was worried that he was a bit rusty. However, in this life, his control of his body seemed to have improved, so this rusty seemed to have been made up. Yang Yi tilted the coffee cup 30 degrees, and then gently tilted the cup of the flower pot, and pulled it up and down. This process required meticulous control of the tilting and shaking of the flower pot. Otherwise, the drawn pattern would be distorted. Gradually, the coffee cup became more and more full. Yang Yi began to pull the string. He lifted the cup of the flower pot to make the amount of milk bubbles that flowed out thinner, and slowly pulled it to the front. When the string was almost completely pulled, the whole cup of coffee happened to be full and not overflowing. It was perfect. During this process, Yang Yi seemed to be doing it steadily. However, when he put down the coffee cup, he still let out a long sigh of relief. In the process, he used a lot of energy. After all, he hadn't made cappuccino for several years. Murphy's coffee and Shi's milk were brought over by Yang Yi on a plate. He was like an experienced waiter. He held the plate firmly with his left hand, and not a single drop of milk spilled. There was a small table next to the piano. Yang Yi placed the cup on it and passed the milk to Shi first. After all, Shi was still a child. After playing the piano for a while, she had enough and couldn't sit still. "Let me see what Mom wants to drink." The little girl held the milk bottle and drank it while curiously coming over to take a look. When she saw it, Shi exclaimed in surprise, "Wow, it's so beautiful." Shi's exclamation made Murphy, who was still playing the piano, curious. What kind of coffee was it that her daughter said it was beautiful? Chapter 148. Coffee can be beautiful. Murphy didn't hear about it. After she finished, she stood up from the stool. "This cup of coffee is specially made for you." Yang Yi held the tray in his hand, pointed to the coffee that was already placed on the small table, and said with a smile. Mofei took a look. In the white and smooth coffee cup, the light brown coffee was about to overflow, and what was even more eye-catching was that there were layers of milk bubbles floating on top of each other, like ripples on the surface of a lake, but they actually condensed into a beautiful heart shape. His heart was so big that it almost filled the coffee cup to the brim. "How did you make it?" It was the first time Murphy saw that coffee could be played with like this. It seemed that no one in the world had ever thought of using milk bubbles to play with coffee. "It's milk bubbles and then," Yang Yi explained, and even gestured with his hands. He didn't know that Murphy actually didn't care about the process of making coffee. She just asked in surprise. However, Shi was very supportive. The little girl held the milk bottle in front of her chest with both hands and forgot to drink it. She looked at her father with two big eyes and couldn't help but exclaim, "So amazing!" Murphy pursed her lips and looked at Yang Yi's serious look. She was happy in her heart, but she didn't want to admit it. She secretly muttered, "So many tricks, don't you think it's mushy? Hey, if you don't restrain yourself in front of Shi, I'll feel embarrassed. I want to drink it too. Papa, can you give Shi some too? Just a little." Shi looked at such a beautiful coffee, and her mind moved again. Because it was beautiful, she forgot the bitterness of drinking coffee in the past. "Ask your mother. This cup of coffee belongs to your mother." Yang Yi smiled and raised his eyebrows at his daughter. Murphy was actually quite reluctant. That heart was like a work of art. How could she be willing to destroy it? "I haven't even had a sip yet," Murphy whispered, and only Yang Yi could hear it. But how could Murphy be a selfish mother? She hesitated for a moment, but she still couldn't stand her daughter's pitiful little eyes and the way she was begging on the small table. She reached out and moved the coffee cup towards her daughter. "All right, you can only taste it once. Children can't drink coffee," Murphy said. "Hee, then let's have a taste." Shi's face lit up as she stretched out her slender index finger and playfully gestured. However, Cici moved her small mouth closer and took a sip from the edge of the cup. Immediately, the little girl's brows furrowed again. "It doesn't taste good. It's so bitter." Shi's mouth was still covered with milk bubbles, as if she had grown a white beard. It was very funny, especially with her bitter little face. The little girl's pitiful and funny appearance almost made Yang Yi and Murphy laugh. This cup of cappuccino was actually not particularly bitter. After all, Yang Yi added milk and sugar, and mixed it according to Murphy's taste. But who asked Shishi to have a painful experience of drinking original flavor coffee before? The bitter taste on the tongue awakened the memory of that time. Shishi distanced herself from the coffee in disgust. When her father wiped her mouth with a tissue, she said to him, "I won't drink coffee anymore. Papa is so bad," lying to Shishi. "Humph. You obviously wanted to drink it." Yang-yi wanted to pinch the little girl's nose, who refused to pay her father, but she nimbly dodged, and then drank her sweet milk while giggling. Shishi didn't drink coffee, but when she took a sip, it destroyed the original shape of the milk bubbles. The heart was crooked, and there was one place that became sharp. Murphy looked at it helplessly, but she couldn't complain about her daughter. However, the coffee was still very delicious. Murphy took a sip, and the strong taste of milk diluted the bitterness of the coffee, and there seemed to be some sweetness in the aftertaste that sank into the heart. Shishi ran to play by herself. Yang-yi turned his head, looked at Murphy and asked with a smile, "How is it? Is it delicious?" Murphy didn't deliberately belittle it. She nodded gently and said, "It's delicious. It's easier to drink after adding milk." "Then I'll add milk for you next time." Yang-yi made a small note in his heart. "Which one of the 12 songs do you like the most?" Between the two of them, it was still music that they could talk about. Yang-yi leaned against the shelf and stood on the side, listening to Mo-fei play the piano comfortably. The two of them were also chatting casually. "Which one do you like the most?" Murphy asked back. Yang-yi scratched his head and pretended not to care and said, "In my voice." Course he liked this song the most. It was too suitable for his experience with Murphy. "It's actually this song." "Then guess which one do I like the most?" Murphy continued to ask. "Oh, In My Voice," Yang-yi said with anticipation. "I already said it's actually the most. Do you still think I like this song the most?" Murphy said angrily. She turned her head to look at Yang-yi's eyes as if to say, "Are you an idiot?" Because she knew that Mu Xiang wrote the song for the person he liked, Murphy didn't even think about her and Yang-yi's story. Yang-yi himself was a little disappointed. He really hoped that Murphy liked the song that he deliberately picked for her the most. "My favorite is Carefree Lament." Murphy gave an answer that Yang-yi didn't expect. Note 1. Carefree Lament. You actually like this song. This song to you, isn't it not challenging at all? Yang-yi asked in surprise. That's right. This song was basically like a poem. It had long lyrics, rhythmic sentences, and a simple and clear melody. Even those who didn't know how to sing would be able to sing this song well. Because the lyrics of this song are well written, Murphy said with emotion. I have never seen such ancient lyrics. Yeah, you told me before that it was China style. Look at this sentence. Self-deprecating, the ink runs out of thousands of feelings, the hero is sad, the song ends, the hair is white, and the beauty dies. Isn't it beautifully written? That kind of faint sadness is included in the Carefree Lament, Murphy said in a genteel manner. What she said made sense. The reason why Yang-yi liked this song was that he felt that the lyrics were well written. Listening to it, he seemed to be able to see the fluttering snow, playing out the love and hatred of the Zhonghu, but being drowned by time. Compared to those songs that use techniques to sing emotions, I still prefer this kind of song with a plain melody, but with profound meaning, Murphy said. She was also interested in playing a song to sing for Yang-yi. But at this time she ran over and shouted, Papa, Papa! There is a strange old man at the door. Note 1. Carefree Lament was originally sung by Hugu, but the female version is quite good. If you are interested, you can search for Su Wei's version on Cloud Music. Chapter 149. Shishi said that there was a strange old man, and the word strange was not wrong. She was playing in the shop earlier, and through the floor-to-ceiling glass, she saw an old man loitering outside, looking around. Yang-yi heard his daughter's words and looked back, only to see an old man in a loose navy cotton linen tang suit and a light gray fisherman's hat standing at the door. Where did this old man come from? Could he be a customer of the coffee shop? Considering Murphy's special identity, Yang Yi stood up and went to the door, just in time to meet the old man's gaze. "I'm sorry, sir, our shop is not open today," Yang Yi said apologetically. In his heart, he was also secretly surprised. This old man was not an ordinary person. His eyes were slightly cloudy. After all, he was old, but he still had a majestic aura, as if he had been in a high position for a long time. "It's not open in broad daylight." The old man frowned, carefully looking at Yang Yi's figure and physique, and asked, "Aren't you the owner of this shop?" "Yes, as you can see, the shop sign is not hung out. It's the school holidays now, and there aren't many customers, so I don't plan to open the shop," Yang Yi smiled and said in a respectful tone. If it were not for the fact that he was afraid of Murphy's identity being exposed, Yang Yi would have invited the old man in. However, Murphy walked over and looked at the old man's face closely. She only confirmed it when she got closer and asked in surprise, "Director Chen, what are you doing here?" This Director Chen exposed Chen Fengchen's identity, and he was also a little surprised. He turned to look at Murphy. At first, he did not recognize Murphy, who did not wear any makeup and was still dressed at home, but after all, the two had worked together before. Murphy sang the theme song for Chen Fengchen's TV series, and a few years ago Murphy was quite famous, so Chen Fengchen recognized her. Murphy. Chen Fengchen's surprise was no less than Murphy's. "It's me." Murphy smiled and said, "Last time when I was recording a program at the TV station, I even bumped into you and greeted you." So it was someone he knew. And from the way he addressed him, he should be someone he was familiar with in the entertainment industry. In that case, there shouldn't be a problem of his identity being exposed. Yang Yi heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly stepped aside. He couldn't let her continue to stand at the door. "Director Chen, please come in and take a seat." Murphy greeted him like a hostess. She even nudged Yang Yi and whispered, "Go and pour some tea for Director Chen. He's not used to coffee." There was still tea in the tea shop. Although Yang Yi did not plan to sell tea in the coffee shop, he often drank tea himself. Seeing Yang Yi turn around and go to the bar, Chen Fengchen looked strangely at Murphy and the little girl behind her who was grabbing her mother's clothes and peeking her head out. Chen Fengchen couldn't help but ask in a gossipy manner, "Little Emo, what are you doing here?" Murphy was a little embarrassed, but the person who asked her was Chen Fengchen. If she was a movie producer, it wouldn't be too much to call him teacher. Therefore she admitted it openly. "Yes, this is my daughter and he's also my husband." "Alright, my husband is also your fan. He's been watching your TV series a few days ago. But our relationship hasn't been made public yet, so I'd like to ask Director Chen to keep it a secret." After saying that, Murphy glanced at Yang Yi at the bar and secretly gritted her teeth. This guy must be secretly happy. Secretly happy. "I won't let you off so easily." Chen Fengchen was a little shocked at first. After all, there was no news of Murphy getting married in the entertainment industry. How could her daughter be so old already? However, he wasn't too surprised. After all, hiding one's feelings and marriage wasn't uncommon in the entertainment industry. However, when he heard Murphy's last sentence and thought of his purpose for coming, Chen Fengchen looked strangely at Yang Yi, who was walking over with a cup of brewed tea. Murphy had a cold personality and wasn't good at socializing. Therefore, after she confessed, her conversation with Chen Fengchen fell into an awkward silence. Chen Fengchen was thinking about his own matters again and didn't care. However, Murphy herself was troubled and didn't know what to say. After Yang Yi brought the tea over and sat beside her, Murphy reluctantly thought of something to say. She asked, "Director Chen, are you here today to look for actors in Jiangchuan?" Apart from this possibility, Murphy couldn't think of any other reason why Chen Fengchen would leave Beijing and come to Jiang City Media University. Yang Yi wasn't interested in the entertainment industry. He brewed tea and brought it over to the old man. In fact, he wanted to pull his daughter away and not disturb Murphy and the other party's conversation. However, Chen Fengchen's expression was a little strange. He pointed at Yang Yi and said, "If I'm not wrong, your husband is Yang Yi, right?" Murphy was surprised. She didn't expect the old man to know Yang Yi's name. However, she wasn't so shrewd. She nodded and said, "Yes, how did you know?" However, Yang Yi had already reacted. There weren't many people who knew his name. Yang Yi sized up Chen Fengchen, who was dressed plainly, and asked tentatively, "Director Chen, is this old man Director Chen Fengchen?" Chen Fengchen smiled and said calmly, "Yes, I'm here to look for him." Before he arrived, Chen Fengchen was still a little worried. He didn't know what kind of temper Yang Yi, the author, had. But now that he saw Murphy and knew that Yang Yi was the husband of someone he knew, he was relieved. He felt that everything was more or less settled. Looking for Yang Yi. This time, it was Murphy's turn to be surprised. Chen Fengchen didn't explain to Murphy. Instead, he raised his head and looked at Yang Yi. He smiled and said, "Little brother Yang should know why I'm here. I'm sorry for the sudden visit. However, it's also because little brother Yang wrote well." Murphy was still a little confused. Yang Yi sat down beside her and whispered in her ear, "Didn't I publish 2 books? He's here to buy the film rights." So that's why. Murphy understood. In an instant, she understood some of the details, including some of her words. She couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Since it was related to him, Yang Yi didn't leave. He looked at the other party indifferently. Although he still used honorifics, his tone was neither servile nor overbearing as he said, "Yes, the publishing company has contacted me. However, I didn't expect that you would come personally. I was thinking of visiting you after this month when my daughter goes to kindergarten." "That's not necessary. I'm not that pedantic. Your books are indeed good. Give me a price. I want to buy both of them to film a TV series." Chen Fengchen waved his hand and went straight to the point. His straightforward manner couldn't be considered straightforward, but as a great director, his uncompromising aura was faintly revealed. If Murphy wasn't here, Yang Yi could give a strong response because he wasn't happy with the other party's oppressive aura. But now that Murphy was here, Yang Yi felt that it would be more troublesome to deal with it. He turned to look at Murphy and exchanged glances with her. "Will it affect you?" Murphy understood his meaning. Her heart felt warm, but she responded with a firm look. "Do as you wish. Don't mind me." Chapter 150. Murphy's response put Yang Yi at ease. "Sir, you may not understand. I'm not from the entertainment industry, so I don't know much about how TV series are shot. However, I hope that my book can be made into a classic TV series, not a lousy one," Yang Yi said with a smile. Chen Fengchen raised his eyebrows and said unhappily, "Are you saying that I'm a director who shoots lousy TV series?" "Director Chen is still very authoritative in the TV series industry," Murphy whispered to Yang Yi. Yang Yi gently patted Murphy's leg. Although there was a layer of cloth between them, the summer blouse was as thin as a cicada's wing. The plump elasticity was clearly reflected in his hand. "Of course not. I don't know much about it. That's why I watched some of your previous TV series a few days ago. I've shot a lot of military TV series. Yes, I can see that you're very good at shooting both war scenes and character dialogue scenes. You're able to shoot the rhythm just right and portray the character's emotions in great detail." Yang Yi nodded. "The only flaw is..." Chen Fengchen did not expect a young brat to dare say that his TV series was flawed. He was a little upset, but he still chuckled and said, "Is that so? Tell me about it." "The war scenes are too fake. There are dozens of extras running back and forth. The so-called hail of bullets looks like burying a few strings of firecrackers in the ground and exploding them. The guns in their hands are also waving as if they've pulled the trigger. It's just a sound, but there's no movement." Yang Yi pointed it out without hesitation. In his previous life, people called it the 50-cent special effects. Chen Fengchen was stunned for a moment and his face turned red. Yang Yi was right. When he was shooting, he was not willing to invest more in the explosion effects. Instead, he was more willing to capture the details of the characters and close-ups of their faces. In other words, it was difficult to get the adrenaline to soar. Soldier's assault is fine, but drawing sword won't be able to capture the feeling if there's not enough war scenes. Yang Yi continued. Chen Fengchen wanted to say, "Why don't I just shoot soldier's assault?" He did not want drawing sword anymore. However, how could he bear to part with drawing sword? Just the thought of fighting the Japanese made his blood boil even at his age. Of course, soldier's assault was also to his liking. As long as it was shot with care, this TV series would not be too bad. Of course, it was impossible for him to shoot 2 TV series at the same time, but he did not want to give drawing sword to someone else either. Therefore, he could only buy both of them and shoot one a year. But the problem was, how could they satisfy Yang Yi's needs? Making special effects costs a lot of money. We're just filming a TV series. Chen Fengchen tried to complain, but at this moment, he had unknowingly fallen into a disadvantageous position. No matter how much money you burn, you still have to shoot a classic. If you can't find a suitable place to shoot in capital city, can't find enough excellent extras, and lack supplies, I can give you a suggestion. Come to Zhongqing to shoot in the Zhongnan military region. Their general has personally promised that if you want to shoot drawing sword and soldier's assault, they will fully support you if necessary. Yang Yi chuckled and said, "With the support of a large military region, are you afraid that you won't be able to find a master of explosives?" These words were indeed proposed by Old Master Qiu Weigua and the others. General Lu Pengju also nodded. "You have such a deep relationship with the military." Chen Fengchen could not help but look at Yang Yi in a new light. He felt that Yang Yi's background was a bit unfathomable. He had married a big star as his wife and had a relationship with the general of the military region. Chen Fengchen could not help but misunderstand. Yang Yi was well aware of it, but he did not point it out. He even smiled slightly and said vaguely, "I'm also a soldier after all. Since you have the support of the Zhongnan military region, I'll give up my old life and shoot a big war drama for you." Chen Fengchen gritted his teeth and said, "Not only that, I hope that Director Chen will choose the right actors. It doesn't matter if they're famous or not, but they must have an absolute passion for acting. They must also be able to portray the character's characteristics. For example, Su Sondua's naivety, or Li Yunlong's slyness and rudeness." Yang Yi said. Chen Fengchen was quite disdainful of Yang Yi's new request. He raised his head and said, "Little brother Yang, it seems that you're underestimating me, Chen Feng. I, Chen Fengchen, am famous in the industry for being stubborn. No matter who the actor is, as long as I don't like them, they can forget about being used by me." "That's true. Director Chen has a good reputation when it comes to selecting actors and training new actors," Murphy said to Yang Yi. "All right then, old mister, please name a price. If you're suitable and satisfy the 2 reasons I mentioned before, then I'll give the copyright of these 2 books to you. It's not a problem." Yang Yi smiled slightly. "Of course, I hope that old mister can film it as soon as possible. For years. If it's not finished by then, I have the right to take back the copyright." Chen Fengchen didn't really care about this issue. He originally wanted to buy it as soon as possible so that he could arrange for the filming. However, he was the one who asked Yang Yi for the price just now. Now that the ball was kicked back to him by Yang Yi, he had to think carefully before raising it. 5 million. 5 million for each book, plus a 6% share of the revenue, Chen Fengchen said. 5 million for the film copyright wasn't bad. Could be said that it was above average in the industry. As for the 6% share of the revenue, it needed to be considered. After all, it was usually 5% to 18%. 6% was only a little higher than the minimum standard set by the Copyright Association. Yang Yi didn't have the extravagant hope of getting 18%, unless his work was good enough and could complete the scriptwriter's work at the same time. Yang Yi didn't have the time to accompany Chen Fengchen to prepare the script. 5 million only includes the film copyright, but I want 15% of the revenue share, Yang Yi said firmly. How is that possible? Chen Fengchen jumped up in excitement. Even Lu Shuping didn't dare to ask for 15%. How is it possible for a new writer like you to ask for 15%? Lu Shuping was a well-known traditional writer in this world. His works had been adapted into several TV dramas, and they were all very popular. Could be said that he could get the highest share of the revenue he could get. He was the benchmark of the industry. However, when Chen Fengchen said that he couldn't get 15%, Yang Yi was reserved. Who knew if this old man was lying? Lu Shuping also didn't announce the details of his contract. So old Mr. doesn't have much confidence in my work. How about this, let's sign a bet. Yang Yi revealed his sincere smile again. If Chen Yijie was here, he would definitely tell Chen Fengchen that he would rather die than bet with Yang Yi. However, no one persuaded Chen Fengchen. He was even interested. Bet. Okay, tell me. Chapter 151. Mom, little Guai, little Gray, and Dondo, are they boys or girls? In the evening, after taking a shower, Shishi wanted to see if the kittens were asleep. Murphy had no choice but to take her to the cat nest in the living room, but she was not allowed to reach out and touch them. The little guy looked at the 3 kittens who were tired and had fallen asleep early and tried to ask in a low voice. Little Gray is the older brother, Dondo is the older sister, and little Guai is the younger brother. Murphy glanced at Yang Yi, who happened to pass by, and said with a smile. As she expected, the expression on Yang Yi's face was gloomy. So little Guai is the younger brother. She pouted and defended little Guai. But why do the older brother and sister bully little Guai even though it is the youngest? How do they bully it? Murphy asked curiously. She felt that the 3 kittens were quite united and often played together. They even snuggled up to each other when they slept, as if hugging each other for warmth. Because they can fight, and little Guai can't beat them. It's so pitiful. She complained to her mother. Then I took it out and didn't let it be bullied. Murphy understood. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry and rubbed her daughter's soft long hair. She said angrily, They are not bullying little Guai. Cats playing with each other is their special little game. Only when they play can they learn all kinds of skills. She was so surprised that her little mouth formed an O shape. So in the future, don't disturb little Guai when it plays with its brothers and sisters. Murphy said. Shishi, you will go to kindergarten to play with other children in the future. You have to learn from each other. Course you can't fight. We are not kittens. Yes. Shishi doesn't fight with children. Sisi nodded longingly. She was quite looking forward to it. Scenes of playing with many children appeared in her mind. Of course, Shishi didn't realize that when she went to kindergarten, her father wouldn't be with her. After she fell asleep, Murphy went to Yang Yi's study. Although she was wearing short-sleeved pajamas, every part of her body was buttoned up tightly and seamlessly. There was no danger of exposing her body. Of course, the aloof goddess on TV who had no makeup on and was dressed so casually sitting next to him was always somewhat attractive. However, Yang Yi was focused on drawing on his newly bought digital sketchpad and didn't have time to look up at her. What are you drawing? Murphy asked curiously. She saw that Yang Yi was drawing a man with his back facing her. His scalp was green as if he had just shaved his head. This man was tall and skinny. His face was fair and clean, but his body was covered with colorful and terrifying tattoos. Yang Yi was carefully drawing his tattoo. I'm drawing an illustration. It's an illustration for my new book, Yang Yi said casually. Why are all your books about strange things? Murphy curled her lips and said, I've read your first 2 books. They're quite normal. There were physical books for soldier assault and drawing sword at home. Of course, Murphy had flipped through them. She had even protested to Yang Yi about the female protagonist's constant death in drawing sword. Course, the first two books were quite good. Although Murphy had no interest in military literature, she could still read them. However, the illustration for Yang Yi's new book made her feel uneasy. She couldn't bring herself to read it. It's a different theme, Yang Yi answered simply. The illustration was almost finished. Yang Yi sped up and drew the last few strokes before turning his head to chat with Murphy. Why did you negotiate such an unfair condition with Director Chen today? Murphy asked in confusion. If the ratings exceed 10%, you'll get a 7% share. If it exceeds 15%, you'll get 12%. If it's the annual ratings champion, you'll only get 16%. There's still hope for the first one. It's not difficult for Director Chen's TV series to exceed 10%, but it's impossible for the latter too. Breaking 15% of the ratings was only possible if it was a famous work, right? As for the ratings champion, it was not only based on one's own results. It also depended on the opponent and the arrangement of the TV station. The right time, place, and people were indispensable. That's because I have confidence in my work. Yang Yi smiled slightly and said, even if I can't win, I think it can still exceed 15%. As long as Director Chen works hard, these two shows have great potential. Drawing sword was needless to say. The glorious results in his previous life were enough to prove it. As for Soldier's Assault, its broadcast results were average in his previous life, but that was not the reason. After all, not many people watched it on the TV stations that broadcast it. However, Yang Yi still believed that this series with good reviews should be able to achieve the results it deserved if it could be broadcast on Central TV in this life. Well, I think Director Chen finds it unbelievable when he sees you. Murphy covered her mouth and laughed. I can't believe someone just said those words to him. That's too disgraceful. Yang Yi smiled slightly and said, I don't care what he thinks. I'm not in the entertainment industry, so there's no need for me to bow down to the so-called authority in your circle. If there's anything to say, I'll say it. For example, the explosion scene in his TV series isn't exciting enough. That's a flaw that needs to be fixed. I really don't understand what you men are thinking. What's so good about fighting and killing all day? Murphy snorted. By the way, do you know what made me happiest today? Yang Yi asked. Murphy was still unaware that Yang Yi had changed the topic. She asked in confusion, what was it? Did you sign a new contract and sell the film rights to make money? No. Yang Yi shook his head. Hurry up and say it. I hate people who keep others in suspense. Murphy said angrily. Yang Yi couldn't help but smile. He looked at Murphy and said, when you introduced me to Chen Fengchen today, you said I was your husband. Murphy's face instantly flushed red. She bit her lower lip and stared at Yang Yi with a hint of annoyance. Hee 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 hee. Yang Yi was a little embarrassed by her stare and laughed foolishly. Who said you were my husband? Murphy refused to admit it. You said it. I heard it all. That was a temporary measure. I can't say you were a passerby, right? She was watching from the side. Murphy puffed up her cheeks and said angrily. That means you've accepted me in your heart. Yang Yi said. Accept your ass. Murphy turned her head and snorted. Why should I accept you? Just a cup of coffee. I'm still angry. Yang Yi had a headache. He couldn't figure out a woman's thoughts. He felt that Murphy's anger had mostly dissipated, but he didn't expect her to still be angry. Men didn't like this. They said everything directly. If they cared, they cared. If they didn't care, they could just turn around and let it go. Even if they were angry, they would have calmed down overnight. Women were still troublesome. Of course, Yang Yi was willing to stir up trouble. He had chosen the path himself. No matter how hard and tiring it was, he had to walk it. Murphy stood up and patted Yang Yi's shoulder coolly. Confucius said, there's still a long way to go. Yang Yi, you still need to continue working hard, do you understand? P.S. Actually, it was Zheng Zi who said that. Chapter 152. In Guangzhou, Mu Yuqing had not logged on to read his latest book for several days. His previous project was nearing the end stage and he was so busy that he barely had time to sleep, let alone pick up his phone to read novels. Today, the final testing work was finally completed. It could be said that everything was ready and waiting for the customer to check and accept it the day after tomorrow. Mu Yuqing only stayed behind with a few maintenance staff and gave the other brothers who had worked hard for more than half a month a day off. Of course, although he stayed in the company, he was also free and could read novels. I've collected dozens of chapters of Remaining Sins, right? This time I can read it to my heart's content. Mu Yuqing thought happily and put his legs on the desk. There were not many people in the project team anyway, so he could sit or lie down if he wanted to. However, in the next second he almost fell out of his chair. What the hell? Mu Yuqing turned over and sat up straight with difficulty. He then growled in a low voice. He was stunned to see a new advertisement banner hanging on the webpage. Soldier Assault, Drawing Sword, Remaining Sins, author Yang Yi, new book Prison Break. See you on September 1st. This level of publicity was obviously enjoyed by a great author. Of course, Yang Yi had already enjoyed it long ago. Mu Yuqing was not surprised by this. However, Mu Yuqing found it hard to believe. I haven't read for a while. Is Remaining Sins finished? He quickly clicked on the page of Remaining Sins, but it was obvious that the book was still in a serialized state. Or was it about to end? Mu Yuqing did not believe it. Even if he had not read for several days, according to the direction of the plot, the book was definitely not ending yet. Fortunately, the book review section gave him an answer. Many readers had already exploded like Mu Yuqing. They were yelling and asking if Yu Zue was going to stop updating. If so, they quickly sent Yang Yi's address. They wanted to send razor blades or teddy bears to guarantee that Yang Yi could open a razor blade shop or a pet shop. Yang Yi naturally did not respond. It was Chiu's official notice that Remaining Sins would be updated as usual, and Prison Break was just Yang Yi's new stove. So this was the rhythm of a double opening. Mu Yuqing frowned. He didn't like authors who had a dual career. It was like a man who had a foot in both boats. If he wasn't focused, it would be harmful to both books. There was a manually pinned post in the book review section. It had already been refreshed tens of thousands of times. It was these readers who were anxiously asking the editors to read the book. They had to persuade Yang Yi to give up on this idea. Mu Yuqing sighed inwardly. He silently followed behind and signed in. He didn't know why, but after hearing this news, he suddenly felt bored. It was like a man's sage mode. He didn't even want to read novels anymore. However, just as he was about to close the book review section, a post caught his attention. Don't spout nonsense if you haven't seen it. I think Prison Break will be great. The person who posted the post urged everyone not to rush to comment on Prison Break. Go to its homepage first before commenting. Homepage. Have you created a homepage for it? Mu Yuqing thought about it and decided to open it. After all, he still had a firm understanding of Yang Yi's strength. Oh, what's this? After opening the homepage of Prison Break, Mu Yuqing couldn't help but take a deep breath. A colorful and messy tattoo came into view. It was just a half-length picture. It was obviously a man's tattoo, but it was densely packed with moms. It covered almost the entire body and even extended to her neck. The tattoo was made up of strange patterns. It looked like a Western church, gods, demons and monsters, but Mu Yuqing obviously couldn't recognize it. It looks like an extremely evil person. So many tattoos. Shiri. Mu Yuqing thought of the book's name and secretly decided on it. However, this promotional picture released by Chiu's official website wasn't that simple. Mu Yuqing noticed that the artist was Yang Yi. Yang Yi knows how to draw. Mu Yuqing was pleasantly surprised. So, this tattoo wasn't used for sensationalism. Maybe the pattern on it had a deeper meaning. Under the homepage, there were already many readers discussing this tattoo in the comment section. There were even fans who were trying to figure out where the gods, demons, and monsters on the tattoo belonged to. Unknowingly, Mu Yuqing already had a very high interest in this book. Forget it, let's open both. With young Dada's ability, he should be able to handle it. I'm looking forward to the exciting story of Prison Break. Escaping from prison. That's a pretty good theme. A book friend commented, expressing Mu Yuqing's thoughts at the moment. In Jiangqing, on the street outside a kindergarten, a burly car was parked outside. What do you have to see outside? Murphy's voice rang out in the car. She muttered to Yang Yi. Can't we just go in and visit? Course you and Shishi go in and take a look. I'll wait outside. Shishi also leaned against the car window and looked around curiously. Mom, what are we looking at? Yang Yi had a different opinion. Just walk in directly and you won't see anything. What you see will be displayed by others. It's no different from what's on your flyer. In fact, we don't know how the children are taken care of by the teachers. Murphy admitted that Yang Yi's words made sense. She was puzzled and asked, Then what should we do? I'll have to do it. You guys wait for me in the car. Yang Yi smiled, unbuckled his seat belt, and pushed the door open. Before Murphy could stop him, Yang Yi had already walked out. She quickly leaned against the car window to see what Yang Yi was going to do. She saw Yang Yi's figure disappear into a deserted alley. Just as Murphy was puzzled, she suddenly saw Yang Yi appear on the rooftop of someone's two-story building. How did he get up there? Mo Fei was dumbfounded. That tall and agile figure seemed to be doing parkour. In the blink of an eye, he had already jumped over several rooftops and arrived at the side of the kindergarten. With a leap, his figure disappeared again. This bastard! Murphy couldn't help but gritted her teeth and muttered. She remembered the time when Shishi was suddenly stolen by Yang Yi. Obviously it was with this skill that he did bad things. Shishi turned her head doubtfully, looked at Mom and then asked, Mom, where did Papa go? He went to buy something for us. Shishi pouted and unhappily said, Papa didn't take Shishi with him. He's so bad. Because Shishi wants to accompany Mom. Mama is very scared in the car alone. Mo Fei comforted her. Shishi suddenly forgot her unhappiness, quickly nodded, took her mother's hand and said, Well, then Shishi will accompany you. Mom, don't be afraid. Shishi is not afraid. After about a quarter of an hour, Yang Yi came back. His face was as usual, as if he was not the one who was jumping around on the roof just now. This kindergarten is not good. The teachers are all sitting on the side and chatting. They let the children play with toys by themselves. They are not responsible at all. Yang Yi shook his head and said to Murphy, Papa, what did you buy for us? She stuck her head out and expectantly asked. Yang Yi's head was full of question marks. Chapter 153. After a few days of in-depth visits, Yang Yi and Murphy finally chose Shishi's kindergarten to be on the other side of the mountain, which was a private kindergarten near the villa area where Yang Yi often went to buy vegetables. It was geared toward children from rich families, so naturally, the school conditions and relevant measures were better than those of ordinary kindergartens. Yang Yi was more satisfied with the strict management of the kindergarten teachers and the emphasis on the teachers' professional ethics. Mo Fei also agreed with this kind of kindergarten, because it could be seen from the brochure that although it did not set up those interest tutoring classes, it would invite some calligraphers, painters, musicians, and other professionals in the city to show the children almost every week, so that the children would be able to stimulate their inner interests in the play of artistic activities. Every month, the kindergarten would organize the children to learn and rehearse plays, both in Chinese and English. At the end of the semester, there would be a party where parents would be invited to participate and the children would perform and show their talents. This was very good. It was educational and fun, and Shishi would not be burdened with heavy schoolwork at such a young age. Murphy and Yang Yi were very satisfied. After registering Shishi, Murphy's most important task for this holiday had been accomplished, and the date of her return to work was gradually approaching. This made Murphy very unhappy. Why should I be mentally prepared to go back and prepare for the new album while Young E, you big bastard, can still be lazy at home every day? Therefore, Young E was forced by Murphy to open a shop downstairs. You have to get busy before me, understand? Murphy leaned against the bar counter and looked at Young E, who was helplessly wiping the coffee cup over and over again, and snorted proudly. Young E and his daughter looked at each other and smiled. He smiled helplessly. She, on the other hand, thought it was funny. She didn't understand that the small quarrel between her parents was also a form of fun, but she liked to see her father being bullied by her mother, just as sometimes she would bully her father. For example, once she suddenly jumped up with a quilt on her body, making threatening gestures. Her father was stunned for a moment, and then his face was full of fear. "Ha, Papa is scared." She laughed happily, but the little girl did not forget to run over and comfort her father. "Papa, don't be afraid. It's she." Since the shop was open, it was inevitable that there would be guests. Although there were few, it would not be good if Murphy's identity was exposed. Therefore, when there were guests coming in, Murphy would cleverly pull she to sit in the innermost booth, pretending that they were also guests. For example, now, she's eyes were the sharpest. She saw a few girls walking around the flower bed to the shop. She quickly ran over and said, Mom, let's run. There are a few aunties coming." Murphy and she quickly returned to their seats, where she's toys were. However, the guests this time were a few young and beautiful girls. Emofe couldn't help but sneak a peek outside and eavesdrop on them. Young E still stood in his bar counter as usual, without any expression, and did not take the initiative to greet them. Several girls pushed the door open, but did not come in immediately. They just chattered at the door. "Is it here?" "It seems to be." "Let's go in and have a look. It's very strange to stand outside." So they swarmed in, bright and beautiful faces. Murphy looked at them from afar and could not help but sigh. It's still good to be young. They were all young girls, but when they came in, they did not think about ordering coffee, but looked at Young E unscrupulously. Young E was a little scared by their stares. What do you want to drink?" Young E finally opened his golden mouth. "Boss, is your shop called the Corner Coffee Shop?" After a burst of pushing, a girl with waist-length hair was pushed out, and she plucked up the courage to ask Young E. Young E paused and said, "We are a coffee shop." He also repeated, wanting them to make their purpose clear. "If you come to a coffee shop, you should drink coffee. Why are you looking at me?" Behind the girl with waist-length hair, several girls could not help but whisper. Not far away, Young E could hear their conversation. "I think it's very possible. Look at this shop, there are a lot of records on the shelf. At first glance, you can tell that the boss is a person who likes music very much. Just because you like to listen to songs doesn't mean you can write songs, right? I also like to listen to songs. Why don't you see me writing songs? Just forget about it, okay?" "What do you mean forget about it?" "Look at the boss's appearance, big and rough. Look at me, who do you think is more similar between the two of us? Please spare me. You're a woman, he's a man. She's a tough woman." That was heart-wrenching. "Look at that piano, I think it's very possible. If you don't know music, who would put a piano in the shop? You don't know. Let me tell you, high-end coffee shops have pianos, and they even invite people to play them. It's very romantic." Okay, don't argue. Let's just ask." After a while of discussion, the girl with waist-length hair was pushed out again. She smiled at Young E. This girl was quite good-looking. Her facial features were regular, and her skin was white and beautiful. She was probably used to using her smile to charm the little boys. But this trick was useless against Young E. "Hello, are you the boss of this shop?" Young E listened to their conversation. He was still confused, but he vaguely felt that something was wrong. But he did not care and nodded. "Then, are you Mu Ziong?" The girl with waist-length hair looked at Young E expectantly and asked. Young E finally realized that something was wrong, but he still firmly shook his head. Behind them, Murphy listened to their conversation and could not help but secretly laugh. They actually think that Yang Yi is Mu Xiang? How did they make the connection? Yes, Yang Yi also wanted to know. He calmly took down a record from the shelf behind him and said, "The Mu Xiang you are talking about, is he the songwriter of the song in this record? Why did you say that I am him?" "Boss, you also like his song. We are all fans of Chen Yijie. The song he wrote for Chen Yijie, Long Time No See, is really nice." A girl with dark red hair said with her eyes lit up. Yesterday, Chen Yijie accidentally revealed that Mu Xiang opened a shop in Jiang City in a program. So we came to look for him. "Boss, isn't the name of your shop the coffee shop on the street corner?" "So we guessed that it was you. So that was it." Yang Yi calmly shook his head and said, "How is that possible? I changed the signboard later. I like this song very much." "Then boss, is your surname Li?" "No, my surname is Yang. Mu Xiang, it seems that his name should be Liang. But his surname is Yang." Yang Yi's denial dispelled their suspicions. Originally, they did not think that Yang Yi was Mu Xiang. Although their faces were full of disappointment, the girls still politely bought coffee for takeout. When they left, they muttered, "I said that he doesn't look like him. Mu Xiang must be a handsome and thin young man, and there must be a story." Yang Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry and secretly shook his head. When he turned his head, he saw that Murphy was looking at him with shining eyes. Yang Yi could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. He thought that he had been exposed. Chapter 154. Murphy stared at Yang Yi, which made Yang Yi's hair stand on end. Well, they misunderstood because of the signboard. Yang Yi wanted to explain. However, Murphy shook her head. "It's really a misunderstanding." Yang Yi tried to explain. His heart was beating like a drum. He was already secretly thinking if he should admit it if Murphy continued to interrogate him. Anyway, he had already laid the groundwork and thought of an excuse. He just wanted to wait until Murphy released the album, so that she wouldn't feel burdened. However, Murphy shook her head and said, "I know you're not Mu Xiang. Isn't it obvious?" Then she looked into Yang Yi's eyes and said, "I just realized that there are many girls who come to your shop to buy coffee. Perhaps it was because school was about to start, but there were several groups of customers in the coffee shop today. The ratio of girls was obviously higher than the ratio of boys. Moreover, they were basically young and beautiful girls." Yang Yi heard and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. So, they were discussing the gender of the customers. That was scary. It's normal to have many girls. This is Zhongqing Media University. It's famous for the imbalance between men and women. Except for some science colleges, there are more girls than boys, especially for the students in the arts. It's said that the ratio of girls to boys is shockingly 4:1. Yang Yi said with a smile. "Who wants to discuss the ratio of girls to girls with him?" Murphy rolled her eyes at him. She didn't want to talk to him, but she was still a little unwilling. "You're not allowed to sell cappuccino to them in the future." Murphy snorted and said, "And you're not allowed to have cappuccino on the menu." Cappuccino was one of the ways to drink coffee. However, in this world, there was no coffee mixed with Italian espresso, steam milk, and foam milk called cappuccino. Murphy heard Yang Yi say that his latte coffee was cappuccino, so she thought that the heart-shaped latte coffee was cappuccino. "I only sell original, handmade coffee here," Yang Yi reminded Murphy. "But why did you say that cappuccino is not allowed on the menu?" "I was wondering if I should buy a milk foam machine. Maybe some customers would order this type of coffee." "Don't sell it." Murphy looked at him angrily. "You can only sell your original coffee. You have to know how to refuse, okay?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "Okay, I also want to stick to my principles." Mo Fei was almost amused by this unreliable guy. However, she still wanted more. "In the future, you're only allowed to make cappuccinos for me, do you understand?" "Sure, I can try a new shape next time," Yang Yi said excitedly. There are many ways to play with it, such as making it into the shape of a leaf or a palm tree. I want you to make me the one you made the other day, the heart-shaped one. Murphy pouted. She was furious. Yang-yi was stunned for a moment. Looking at Murphy, he finally understood what they were talking about just now. In the capital, at the barbecue stall in Xiren village, Guazi was eating and drinking with his brothers who had drifted from Beijing. Xiao Gua, let me give you a toast. A short, swarthy brother from the countryside stood up and said with a red face while holding a wine glass, "Although you are younger than me, I think I should call you Teacher Gua because I have learned a lot from you these days, and I have improved a lot." Gangsha, don't say that. Aren't we all learning from each other and improving each other? Guazi quickly stood up with a wine glass. This was his farewell banquet. He was going back to Jiang City tomorrow and was about to report for school. Guazi wanted to treat his brothers to a good meal. It had been many years since he left, and he didn't know when they would meet again. Therefore, Guazi also drank a few glasses of beer. He didn't have much alcohol tolerance, so he was a little dizzy. Gangsha spoke in his rustic Mandarin and said, "No, Teacher Gua, I have to thank you. Not only did I learn a lot from you, but you also praised us before you left and introduced us to Brother Bin and Director Ruan. These are all small things. I am also pushing the boat with the current. Whether you can seize the opportunity to have a meteoric rise or not, it still depends on your own efforts." Guazi said. "Are you done?" A few brothers began to kick up a fuss. "If you don't eat this barbecue, it will be eaten up by us." Gangsha puffed out his chest, raised his glass respectfully and said loudly, "I won't say much. I wish you a bright future, Teacher Gua, a good person, a peaceful life." With that, Gangsha raised his head and finished the glass of beer. "Hey, just call me Xiao Gua," Guazi called out. He didn't hesitate and finished the beer with Gangsha. At the same time, in a bar in Jiangqing's Tingshan district, it was crowded. Some young men and women were drinking, some were talking loudly, and of course there were also people jumping in the middle of the dance floor. "Sorry, please make way." Ding Xiang was squeezed around in the crowd. She was thin and small like duckweed with no support. She was working part-time. A little sister introduced her to a daily job. Moreover, the bar only opened at night. It just so happened that she could miss the appointment with Senior Mao Peifu to welcome the newcomers. Of course, Ding Xiang wasn't working as a beer girl here. She was dark and thin, and her figure was flat. Even if she was asked to be a beer girl, she probably wouldn't be able to do it. She was holding a rag, a broom, and a trash spatula, shuttling back and forth in every corner of the bar, cleaning up the beer bottles, cups, cigarette butts, and other debris left behind by the customers who left. Perhaps there would also be small white umbrellas that would appear in dark corners that needed to be cleaned. At first, Ding Xiang was a little embarrassed, but later she got used to it. That's right, Ding Xiang was doing the work of a cleaner. The money wasn't much, but she secretly calculated that if she worked hard for more than 10 days, she should be able to earn enough living expenses for September. This job wasn't easy at all. The main thing was that she had to shuttle through the crowd often, which was very tiring. When she was tired, Ding Xiang would also stand at the edge of the crowd and listen to the bar's resident singer on the stage sing. "I've let down too many people. Today I've become a victim and treat you with sincerity." On the stage was a handsome young man. Apparently, his name was Lin Muan. However, because he was singing a Cantonese song, it was difficult to resonate with the bar in Jiangqing. "Silly boy. Wishful thinking of finding a beautiful beginning, wanting you to see through this heart, but falling down is very ironic. Come and go, but still can't change the will of heaven." Actually, Ding Xiang couldn't understand it either, but she felt that Lin Muan's singing was quite nice. His voice was just like his personality, clean and clean, but with a hint of sadness that couldn't kill people. It was very infectious. This kind of guy, it was as if he was shrouded in a layer of fog, very attractive to girls. Ding Xiang was no exception. After all, she was also a girl. But it was just admiration. Ding Xiang looked at her gloves a little self-abashedly, but still turned to work. Another customer had left, and there was a table that needed her to clean up. Note 1. The lyrics of this song came from the real Hong Kong singer Zhou Baihao's Silly Boy, pretending to exist in that world. Friends who are interested in Cantonese songs can listen to it. Chapter 155. Early in the morning, by the flower bed where butterflies were flying, Murphy leaned against the lush banyan tree and watched Young Yi and her daughter practice kung fu with a faint smile. It was a bit inaccurate to say that they were practicing kung fu. It would be better to say that Young Yi was teaching Shi how to wield a sword. As usual, Young Yi asked Shi to do a few sets of lunging movements so that she could move her body. In the past, Young Yi had planned to gradually increase Shi's exercise volume, but Murphy was worried that her daughter would be trained to be a tough woman, so she strictly forbade Young Yi to let Shi train her muscles. However, when practicing kung fu, Shi's face was still quite serious. The little girl was wearing a pink short-sleeved shirt and shorts while practicing kung fu. Coupled with her serious expression, she was a bit cool. "Today, Dad will teach you a trick. It doesn't have any practical effect, but it's very beautiful," Young Yi said. "Watch Dad perform it first." Shi watched very seriously, and Murphy also opened her eyes wide with interest. Young Yi held the sword by his wrist and took a slight step forward. With the inertia of his waist, he began to wield the sword. Although the stainless steel sword had not yet been sharpened, it was still shining with silver light. When he waved it, it was as if the light connected into a line, and the line connected into a surface, like a blooming sword flower. "Amazing!" Murphy couldn't help but exclaim. She couldn't tell what was amazing about it, but from an aesthetic point of view, this kind of fancy trick was very attractive. She was the same. It was hard for her to resist beautiful things. Although the little girl still looked serious, she couldn't wait to clench her small fists and whispered, "I want to learn, Papa, I want to learn this." Yi stopped. He smiled and put the sword aside, then twisted his wrist and said, "Come, Shi, exercise your wrists with Dad first." Although Shi longed to be able to wield a sword as well as her father, she had become much more patient after these days of training. She obediently exercised her wrists together with her father. On the other hand, Murphy playfully put her hands behind her back and strode over. Like a thief, she picked up Young Yi's sword. She wanted to learn how to wield it, but the moment she lifted it, she felt a heavy weight. "Wow! It's so heavy!" Murphy exclaimed. She couldn't hold it with one hand, so she had to hold it with both hands. Hearing this, Shi looked over. The little girl proudly puffed out her chest and said, "Because Papa is strong, just like Sun Wukong. He needs to carry heavy weapons." Young Yi took the iron sword from the disappointed Murphy. He smiled and said, "If you want to play, I'll get someone to beat you up later." No need, no need." Murphy shook her head and said, "I don't have time to play. I'm about to start recording songs again." Well, she was about to go back to the company to prepare for the new album. For the sake of convenience, she naturally had to live in the house in the coastal area. Young Yi was reluctant to part with her, but he still had to understand Murphy's hard work, so he didn't ask her to stay. Young Yi shook his head, sorted out his thoughts, and then continued to explain to Shi, "Our move is called sword drawing flower. There are two kinds of it. One is wrist cutting flower, and the other is wrist lifting flower." Young Yi and Shi each held a sword and stood face to face. Shi also imitated her father and raised the wooden sword in her hand. No matter which one, you have to pay attention to the gesture. Like this, clasp your two fingers tightly, but don't clasp too tightly. Keep your wrist and the sword flexible. "But Shi doesn't know how to turn it," the little girl pouted and said to her father. Young Yi handed the sword to his left hand and held Shi's little hand with his right hand. He taught her, "Come on, follow Dad's movements. Take your time." In the wrist-cutting flower, the direction of the sword's rotation is from the outside down, in and then out again. Under her father's hands-on guidance, Shi quickly formed a certain muscle memory and could slowly draw the sword a little. "I'm so tired. My hands are sore." She couldn't hold it for a while. After all, she was still a child. Murphy finally had value. She quickly took out Shishi's milk bottle from the bag next to her and said, "If you're tired, take a rest. Girls shouldn't be in a hurry to learn these rough things. Take your time. Drink some soy milk first." With Murphy spoiling her, Young-E had no choice but to stand aside with his sword. He also spoiled his daughter, but when Shishi practiced martial arts with him alone, she was not so delicate. After learning for less than 5 minutes, the rest time was even longer. Shishi felt that she had rested enough. The little girl grabbed her little wooden sword and skipped over to her father to continue learning. "Your hands are sore from practicing just now. The problem is that your way of exerting force is wrong. You have to make full use of your waist to reduce the burden on your wrist." Yang-E patted his waist with his left hand and gestured to Shishi while drawing the sword a little to demonstrate. Young-E stopped and gestured to Shishi. "Try it yourself. Find the frequency and feeling of your waist rotation." The little girl was indeed talented. She could still remember the movement of cutting the flower, and she didn't even need her father to describe it in detail. She twisted her thin waist left and right and gradually found a little feeling. "Not bad. You can speed up a little." Young-E gave her a look of appreciation. The little girl who was praised by her father immediately showed joy on her face and became more energetic. "Let's try to lift the flower. This is the opposite of cutting the flower. It's from the inside out." Young-E did the same as before. He first demonstrated and then taught his daughter step by step. She learned very quickly. After a while, she was very proficient in both movements. "Okay, it's almost time to go back and have breakfast." Murphy still cared about her daughter and didn't let Young-E teach her anymore. "Okay then. We'll continue to learn the movements tomorrow." Young-E put away the sword and said to Shishi with a fist salute. "Yes." Shishi also held the sword upside down and saluted her father with a fist salute. Shishi's figure was taller than her peers. Now that she was mature, she not only looked cool, but also looked like a beautiful girl. Murphy couldn't help but laugh. She held Shishi's hand and said softly, "Our Shishi is smart, right? Your papa has already told Mama that Sisi learns things very quickly. Mom is very happy." The little girl was now like a 4-year-old girl. She snuggled in her mother's arms and smiled a little embarrassedly. But Mom doesn't want Shishi to be like Papa and only know how to be fierce. Shishi has to be a good girl. Learn to play the piano and sing like Mom, okay? Murphy took the opportunity to say. Young-E, who was following behind, smiled helplessly. He wasn't very fierce. It was just that he lost control of his emotions that he was fierce to Murphy once. Usually, although he wasn't a mature man who knew how to coax people, he was at least a gentle and good man. Yes. Shishi also likes to play the piano. She nodded in response. The 3 people bathed in the morning sun, walked through the path filled with the fragrance of flowers, and walked home. Chapter 156. At the end of August, Murphy still had to leave. In the bedroom, Young-E helped Murphy fold her clothes and neatly put them in the suitcase. The two of them buried their heads in their work and didn't say a word. "Mama, when are you coming back?" Sisi reluctantly followed behind her mother, as if she was a follower, blindly following her every step. "Mom has to go back to take care of some things. She'll be back in a while. She'll definitely send Shishi to kindergarten." Murphy turned around and hugged her daughter. This time, the main reason she went back was to explain to Sister Ling about the new album. They had already prepared 12 songs. It was time for Sister Ling to fulfill her promise and put the preparation of Murphy's new album at the highest level of priority. If they started preparing for the new album, Murphy wouldn't need to rush to various cities and reduce the number of commercial performances and announcements. "Then Mom, don't leave when you come back in the future, okay? Shishi doesn't want you to leave." The little girl pursed her lips and said aggrievedly. Thinking that her mother wasn't by her side, Shishi felt very uncomfortable and her big eyes began to fill with tears. Murphy subconsciously glanced at Yang Yi. This blockhead was still lowering his head and helping her pack without saying a word. She pursed her lips and continued to comfort Shi. No matter how reluctant they were, they still had to leave. Mo Xiaojuan's car arrived downstairs early. Murphy carried Shi and Yang Yi followed behind with a suitcase. The two of them were silent as if they had returned to the past. But in fact they didn't. Because when they looked at each other, their eyes didn't have the indifference of the past. They just hid their reluctance and only wanted the other to see their strength. Brother-in-law, it's not a life and death separation. Don't worry, I'll take good care of my sister. Mo Xiaowan opened the trunk and said with a smile. Murphy and her daughter were like a couple who were about to part. They were reluctant to part with each other, and it was difficult for them to say goodbye. Murphy made countless promises and finally managed to coax Shi. Finally, before getting into the car, Murphy couldn't hold it in any longer. She pouted and walked up to Yang Yi. She lightly kicked the tip of Yang Yi's shoe. Hey, big blockhead, don't you have anything to say to me? Yang Yi scratched his head and pondered for a moment before saying, Take care of yourself. Don't tire yourself out. These concerns made Murphy feel warm in her heart, but she still felt that it was not enough. Of course, Murphy understood Yang Yi's personality and did not force him. Murphy stretched out her hand and pulled out Yang Yi's collar, which he had not spread out properly today, and gently folded it. Then I'm leaving, Murphy said, but she still couldn't help but remind him. Take good care of Shi at home. Also, bathe the cats more often. Feed them cat food and water on time. Don't forget. Yang Yi nodded. Mo Xiaowan was in the driver's seat. She rolled down the window and looked at the two guys with great interest. There was a smile in her eyes. Also, don't be a womanizer. Keep a distance from those girls, Murphy said with her head lowered and gently bit her lower lip. After saying that, she felt embarrassed and wanted to turn around and leave. But suddenly her hand was pulled. It was pulled by a warm, rough hand. Yang Yi pulled Murphy and looked at her. After a few seconds, he took out an envelope from his trouser pocket and gently placed it in Murphy's hand. What's this? Murphy felt that her brain was a little short of oxygen at that moment. Yang Yi let go of her hand and scratched his head a little embarrassedly. Letter. You can read it when you get back. Murphy forgot how she got into the car. She forgot if she had said goodbye to Shi and Yang Yi. Anyway, in the front passenger seat, she sat in a daze and looked at the envelope in her hand. Are you serious? Sis, why are you so useless? Brother-in-law wrote you a love letter and you're so happy that you're confused. Have you never received a love letter before? Mo Xiaojuan's teasing made Murphy come back to her senses. Who said I haven't? You little girl, just focus on driving. Mo Fei blushed and said angrily. She had been beautiful since she was young. She did receive a lot of love letters, but because she debuted at a very young age, she didn't spend much time in school. The love letters she received were basically cleared by her agent at the time. Besides, how could other people's love letters be compared to Yang Yi's? While waiting for the traffic light, Mo Xiaowan looked over excitedly and said, Look sis, look at what brother-in-law wrote. Murphy quickly took the envelope in her hand and said, What? I'm not going to show it to you. Do you have to be so mysterious? Mo Xiaowan pursed her lips and snorted. She said, But I can't stand you guys. Each of you is more stubborn than the other. You obviously like each other, but you're not willing to take the initiative to confess. No way. Murphy subconsciously retorted. She then lowered her voice and said, How can a woman speak first? I think brother-in-law won't speak either. With his personality, Mo Xiaowan couldn't help but shake her head. I really can't stand it. He's more wooden than a block of wood. How can he be more romantic than Muxiang? His love songs are so good. I can guarantee that there's nothing mushy in the letter brother-in-law wrote to you. Being a block of wood also has its benefits. Why does he have to be so mushy? Besides, Murphy couldn't help but want to refute for Yang Yi. She wanted to tell Imo Shawan about the series of mushy things that Young-e did after he said that he wanted to pursue her. However, Murphy was afraid that it was really like what Imo Shawan said. What if what Young-e said in the letter was just ordinary things? Wouldn't that be very embarrassing? Murphy couldn't help but open the letter, wanting to see what was inside. However, when she took out the white letter and opened it, Murphy couldn't help but be stunned. She stared at it blankly for a long time. What's written? Imo Shawan stopped at a traffic light and asked. Murphy's face was red. She hesitated for a moment, but still handed the letter to Imo Shawan. She felt a little proud. Although she tried her best to hide it, the corners of her mouth still curled up slightly. Imo Shawan took it and looked. It's a poem. Brother-in-law can write poems. She casually read it out. As long as we love each other once. If we never meet, perhaps our hearts will never be heavy. If we really miss the opportunity, I'm afraid our whole life won't be easy. One look is enough to make the heart sweep past a hurricane on the barren land. Understand the scenery more deeply. Once on a long journey is enough to haggle a frail heart. Every time I look at the autumn waters, I wish I could tear up. How can death not be unhurried? How can love be indifferent as long as we love each other once is a life with no regrets. This poem, Only Loved Each Other Once, was written by Young-e's previous life's famous poet, painter Wang Guozhen. However, Young-e didn't copy the entire second half of the poem. He only copied the positive part of the first half. When Imo Shawan read the poem, it was like plain water, plain and tasteless. It also didn't reflect the charm of the poem. But it didn't matter. On the letter, Young-e's simple and elegant small handwriting had already vividly reflected the delicate feelings of the poem. Oh my God, brother-in-law really wrote a love letter. And it's a love poem. Imo Shawan exclaimed after reading it. Murphy wanted to laugh, but she didn't want to appear too complacent. She pursed her lips and pretended not to care. It's just a poem, what's so strange about it? I won't be so easily tricked by a poem. Just a poem. Humph. Now you get those boys who only know how to send flowers and say mushy words. Let's see who's better than my brother-in-law. Imo Shawan changed sides. As long as we love each other once, it's a life with no regrets. Imo Shawan repeated the last sentence. She couldn't help but curl her lips. I take back what I said just now. Brother-in-law isn't a blockhead. He's so mushy. All right. Stop reading, it's time to drive. Murphy snatched the letter back, carefully folded it and put it back into the envelope. She then carefully put it into her bag, afraid that she would break it. Have you eaten breakfast? If you haven't, I'll call Auntie Zhu and ask her to prepare some porridge for you. I'm not eating. Imo Shawan drove the car and said weakly. I'm full from your PDA. Chapter 157. The freshmen had to undergo military training, so they had to report earlier than the seniors. On this day, the banners and colorful flags of Zhongqing Media University were fluttering in the wind. The welcoming teams of the various faculties were wearing different colored vests as they gathered with the freshmen and their parents who were full of joy. It was very lively. However, the territory of the School of Business Media was much quieter. After all, they were a small faculty and only had 2 specializations: electronic media and e-commerce. The Film Academy is still better. Look, there are reporters taking photos. A guy sighed and complained under the tent of the School of Business Media. That's because they have many celebrities. Some are celebrities who got in, and some are future superstars. A girl next to him pouted. She had put on light makeup today, but it was obviously difficult to attract the attention of others. There were many beauties in the Film Academy, and each one was prettier than the other. Long legs, thin waists, oval faces, cherry lips, a perky nose and large eyes. Looking at them once, they would be intoxicated. Looking at them twice, they would fall in love. Every beauty that came to report had killed many reporters. The guys were also excitedly sneaking glances and commenting in low voices. Hey, this one is good. She has good legs. I think she can play with them for a year. What's the use of long legs? I think this one is better. Delicate and exquisite big eyes. So cute that I want to pinch them. The girl next to him heard and couldn't help but pout. What's so great about big eyes? How many of them are really big? Isn't it the effect of wearing contact lenses? At this moment, the person in charge for the day, Mao Peifu, finally rushed over. She clapped her hands and said, Okay, don't just look. Let's get to work. Da Qing, get someone to go with you to the logistics department and move our water over. Don't really move it. There's a trolley. One. Lin, you and Xiaoya stay in the base camp on the boat. Register the freshmen and distribute the supplies. Then arrange for the guys to lead the way to the dormitory. Alright, remember to remind them to do a physical examination. Ding Xiang and those who had a meeting with us yesterday, follow me. We'll split up according to last night's arrangement and go to the 2 school gates to pick up the new students. Mao Peifu commanded in a clean and efficient manner. She was majestic and full of aura. Okay. Ding Xiang was the most diligent. She took the lead and picked up a few big signs. The school gate was not as comfortable as the base camp. There was no shade and no place to sit. After a while, a few boys were crying and complaining because of the sun. Hey, can you guys act like men? Do you see how many students our Ding Xiang has received? Each one of you is more lazy than the other. Are you going to shrink back to school if I'm not here? Mao Peifu said snappily. Hee, Sister Peifu, Ding Xiang is used to the sun. Look at how dark she is. A guy said shamelessly. Ding Xiang will send the next student to the base camp and dormitory. You guys switch places with her. Mao Peifu said fiercely. Ah! Immediately, a wave of cries and shouts rang out. They did not want to stay at the school gate. After sending the students in, they could be lazy. In the middle, they could drink some water in the base camp and sit in the dormitory for a while. This was better than being stared at by Mao Peifu at the school gate. Ding Xiang just turned around. When she heard this, she quickly said, Senior sister, it's okay. What do you mean it's okay? Listen to my arrangements. These guys, let them suffer. Mao Peifu pulled Ding Xiang and said with heartache, Now the men in this world are useless. They don't see themselves as men and still use women as men. The boys beside her smiled bitterly and did not dare to refute. There was no choice. Mao Peifu was pretty. Although she could not be compared to the stars in the film school, she could be said to be the school flower in the School of Business and Media. Although her temper was not good, being beautiful was the truth. While they were talking, a sweaty little fatty dragged a large suitcase, a computer bag, and a large luggage bag as he struggled to get off the bus. After looking around for a while, he saw Mao Peifu's sign. His eyes lit up and he quickly dragged all his things over while panting. Hi, here, I am. You're from the School of Business and Media? Ding Xiang asked. Yes. After half a month of floating in Beijing, Guozi did not lose weight, but he was tanned a lot. His original 16-year-old face now looked a lot more mature. I'm from that electronic media major. Just in time. Mao Peifu smiled. Ding Xiang, your direct junior brother. Come, give me your sign. Quickly send him over. Senior sister. Ding Xiang could not win against Mao Peifu and her sign was snatched away. But Mao Peifu also casually gave it to a guy with a bitter face. Guozi was a little confused. He felt a little wronged. Is it necessary? Am I that ugly? In any case, I have the face of a star in the fat world. Guozi thought Ding Xiang despised him. Alright, let's go to the base camp. I'll bring you to report first. Ding Xiang finally obeyed the arrangement. She walked in front of Guozi and smiled at him, revealing her white and neat teeth. Okay. How should I address you, senior sister? Guozi was big-hearted and fat, so he did not mind at all. He put the luggage bag on top of the suitcase and prepared to push it. However, the luggage bag was too big. Once he pushed the suitcase, it twisted and fell. I'm Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang reached out and took the luggage bag, holding it in her hands. Hey, senior sister, I'll carry this. Guazi was too embarrassed to let a girl carry it for him, so he quickly snatched it. Now the suitcase fell to the ground. The little fatty stood there stupidly, so awkward. Puffed. Ding Xiang laughed. She did not have the habit of covering her mouth, so she smiled very brightly. All right, I can help you carry it. I'm used to working since I was young, unlike you kids in the city. All right then. Guazi could only drag the suitcase and walk with Ding Xiang. Senior sister, are you the Ding Xiang from Lilac Flower? No, it's Xiang from Xiang province. From there. Oh. Senior sister, are you from the Miao tribe? I know there are many villages in Xiang province. Yeah, I grew up in the Miao village since I was young. Hee, then do you know how to release goo? I heard that when a Miao woman falls in love with someone, she will release goo. If he abandons her, then the goo will help her take revenge. Luckily, they arrived at the base camp in a short while. Otherwise, Guazi might have been smashed flat by Ding Xiang's bags on the road. With the current sun, it might be cooked in a short while. The egg would be cooked. Electronic media major, sign in here to collect your information, Ding Xiang said. Just as Guazi was reporting, there was a commotion at the film academy. A handsome boy was surrounded by classmates, teachers, and even reporters as he was escorted to the reporting area. Chapter 158. Actually, such a commotion was not uncommon. Every year, there would be some famous celebrities admitted to Zhongqing Media University. There was one in the morning, and it was even bigger than this. At that time, it was a small-time female star who had acted in a few TV series. The boys swarmed over like a hornet's nest being poked. However, this handsome boy was a little hard to understand. They had never seen him before. Although he was quite handsome, his hairstyle was styled according to the standards of celebrities, and his skin was soft and tender. He was very popular with the girls of this era. Who is that? Ding Xiang couldn't help but ask. I don't know. I've never seen him before. A girl beside her shook her head. But he's quite handsome. Guazi had just finished signing his name. He looked up and glanced at the boy who was reporting. He pursed his lips without a trace. He had seen this person before. They were in the same group for the arts exam. However, his acting skills were really bad. He was considered skilled, but his face was expressionless. He came and went with a cool expression. At this moment, a girl ran back excitedly. She had joined in the commotion just now. I know who he is. It's Tang Kaitai. Who's Tang Kaitai? Someone was still confused. Tang Kaitai is the former child star. However, his father is more influential. He's now the leader of Xiangnan TV station. When Tang Kaitai was young, he was brought by his father to appear in their children's programs. Later on, he also acted in some TV series. It's only in recent years that he went overseas to further his studies. Oh, so he was reincarnated into a good family. A boy couldn't help but say sourly. Tang Kaitai is also very hardworking. He acted in many films when he was young. I watched him grow up. The girl said shamelessly. You're older than him, right? Her friend exposed her mercilessly. So he had a background. No wonder he could get in with such bad acting skills. Guazi was silent. If it was the old him, he would definitely criticize her and then use his top score to prove that he was the one who should be admitted to the film academy. However, Guazi had been working hard in Beijing for a while now and had matured a lot. Although he criticized her in his heart, he didn't say it out loud. There were no twists and turns in the base camp. After reporting, Guazi took some of the information handed over by his senior brothers and sisters and found his dormitory. Ding Xiang carried his luggage and sent him off as usual. How embarrassing. Senior marshal sister, actually I know the way here. I've been to Jiangchuan several times in the past. Just let me go by myself. Guazi really felt bad about letting a girl carry his bag for him. He dragged his suitcase and was about to snatch it from her. You can't carry it yourself. The dormitory is still far away. Ding Xiang refused. Guazi almost tripped over his own feet, but Ding Xiang's eyes were sharp and her hands were quick enough to support him. Guazi didn't expect Ding Xiang to be so strong. Her left hand was able to support him, who was more than 170 kilograms. He even staggered a few steps in a sorry state before he managed to steady himself. "Look, let me help you carry it," Ding Xiang said with a smile. Guazi was so ashamed that he wanted to dig into the ground. He had no choice but to accept Ding Xiang's arrangement. In Beijing, director Chen Fengchen, who had obtained the copyright, wasn't in a hurry to hold a press conference. He was still busy filming a historical drama. Although it was almost ending, every project should be finished well. Chen Fengchen still needed to be busy for a few months with filming and post-production. Of course, he didn't completely put these two works aside. Chen Fengchen found his personal scriptwriter and asked him to help change the original novel into a script. At the same time, Chen Fengchen also started to use his various connections to find suitable actors. Even if Yang Yi didn't request, Chen Fengchen, who liked to strive for perfection, would still choose the most suitable actor for his own film. All of this was carried out in full swing. Chen Fengchen didn't look like a 60-year-old man at all. He was full of energy and devoted himself to his work. In Jiangcheng, at Tianmei's headquarters, Murphy brought Mo Shaowan and knocked on Sister Ling's door. "Murphy, you're back. How was your vacation?" Niu Meiling was still smiling. There was another person sitting in her office. Zhen Chua, Zhen Muqian's manager. Mo Shaowan and the other person's eyes met. The smell of gunpowder was very strong. "Sister Ling, everything is fine." Murphy smiled at Niu Meiling. "All right, Sister Ling, I have something to tell you." Just like before, Murphy didn't like to be polite. "Sister Ling, do you want me to go out first?" Jian Chua pushed her chair and stood up. "It's fine. Jian Chua isn't an outsider. If you have something to say, just say it," Niu Meiling said with a smile. Murphy didn't feel anything, but Mo Shaowan slightly frowned. She noticed that Sister Ling's attitude towards Murphy was different. However, now wasn't the time to worry about this problem. Mo Shaowan opened the folder in her hand and said to Niu Meiling, "Sister Ling, before you said that if we prepared 12 songs, we would start preparing a new album for Murphy." "That's right. What are you guys doing?" Niu Meiling looked at Murphy and Mo Shaowan with slight surprise. Mo Shaowan faintly smiled. She took out a piece of paper from the folder and pushed it in front of Niu Meiling. "Now that we have prepared 12 songs, I'll have to trouble Sister Ling to tell everyone at tomorrow's meeting to put Murphy's new album on the agenda." 12 songs. This exclamation came from Jian Chua. She looked at Mo Shaowan in disbelief. "That's right." Mo Shaowan charmingly smiled at the other party. In Jian Chua's eyes, Mo Xiaojuan's smile was full of malice. She was very unhappy and said sourly, 12 songs in such a short time. Who knows if they were randomly found in the Copyright Association's library. Sister Ling, if they're all bad songs, then this album might as well not be released." Niu Meiling didn't make a move. She just looked at Mo Shaowan. "We didn't randomly gather 12 songs," Mo Shaowan proudly said. "Sister Ling, the song list I gave you has the names of the songwriters." Niu Meiling frowned and looked down. It was all Mu Xiang. Mu Xiang. Niu Meiling didn't react for a moment. Mu Xiang. That Mu Xiang. Jian Chua's face changed. "The Mu Xiang who wrote 2 songs for Chen Yijie." "Hee, that's right." Mo Shaowan raised her head and proudly said. "Mu Xiang is our Sister Fei's fan. He wrote 12 songs for Sister Fei in one go, and every one of them is a masterpiece." Shaowan. Murphy felt that Mo Shaowan was a bit too complacent and reprimanded her. Even so, looking at Mo Xiaojuan's proud look, Niu Meiling and Jian Chua knew that what they said was true. "Sister Ling, you know that I've always been a very serious person when it comes to music." Murphy looked at Niu Meiling and said sincerely, "Fortunately, we have the help of an excellent composer like Mu Xiang." The 12 songs are all of good quality. I believe that after this album is released, it won't let you down. Nyo Myling forced a smile and said, Okay, Murphy, have you recorded the demo? Yes. Mo Shawan was already prepared. She took out a disc and handed it over. You guys go back first. I'll listen to the song and give you an answer tomorrow, okay? Nyo Myling said kindly. Murphy nodded and left with Mo Shawan. Chapter 159. After she left, Nyo Myling and Jian Chua looked at each other speechlessly. It was Jian Chua who spoke first. She said unhappily, Sister Ling, this Mo Shawan is too much. Just because she's Murphy's relative, she doesn't care about us at all. Compared to Murphy and Mo Shawan, Jian Chua, who had been brought up by Nyo Myling, was more like one of them. Nyo Myling shook her head and said, Let's not talk about her. When the contract is renewed next year, I'll give Murphy a personal assistant. Mo Shawan can just focus on being her personal assistant. Jian Chua's eyes fell on the CD on Nyo Myling's desk. Her expression changed and she said, Sister Ling, let's listen to her song. Let's see if it's the real Mu Ziyang. After Mo Fei spoke, Nyo Myling actually already had an answer in her heart. She also knew that Mo Fei rarely lied, but she still obeyed and handed the CD to Jian Chua. Jian Chua turned on the sound system that was embedded in the wall behind her and played it. When the first song was played, Nyo Myling and Jian Chua looked at each other in surprise. When the second song was played, they no longer had any doubts about Mu Ziyang's identity. The third song, before they finished listening, Nyo Myling had already stood up and turned off the sound system. Her face was gloomy. Sister Ling, this is going to be difficult, Jian Chua said carefully. Nyo Myling sighed heavily. I originally wanted to suppress her, but now with these songs, she's going to soar again. Jian Chua said unhappily. How can this person be so lucky? Why doesn't my Xinjiang have a fan named Mu Ziyang? Nyo Myling also had a headache. She wanted to take advantage of the last year of the contract to force Murphy to sign a new contract. Even Jian Chua didn't know that the reason why Murphy's album was so bad was because she had done something during the process of collecting the songs. Her wings have hardened. She's going to fly. Nyo Myling murmured, her eyes flashing with a strange light. Sister Ling, you said that almost every one of these 12 songs is very good. They can even be used as a main song for others. Jian Chua's eyes also flickered as she said, Why don't we share a few songs? For example, this Crossing the Ocean to See You. I think it's very suitable for our Zhenjian's sweet voice. Nyo Myling frowned and looked at her. Jian Chua chuckled. He wasn't afraid at all. He leaned over and whispered in Nyo Myling's ear. Anyway, this song was written by Mu Ziyang. If it's sent to our company, it will belong to our company. Give Zhenjian a few songs. This and that won't just sit there and watch. Everyone should be distributed. No matter what, we can reduce Murphy's chances of making a comeback. Nyo Myling narrowed her eyes and thought for a while. She waved her hand and asked Jian Chua to come closer. I'll leave this to you. Do it well. Sister Ling, I say, if you want to do it, let's just do it. Jian Chua said boldly. Didn't Murphy say that her fans wrote a song for her? Those documents should be sent back and forth by email. Let's bypass them and find Mu Ziyang. Or we can use Murphy's tone to send an email to Mu Ziyang and ask him to authorize our company. Nyo Myling's eyes lit up. She patted Jian Chua and said, Let's do it. You go to the technical department. I'll call them later and ask them to fully cooperate with you. Yang Yi was about to email Chong Zi the high-definition illustration of the prison break that night. He didn't expect to receive an email from Murphy, but the wording was a bit strange. The beginning was, Dear Mu Ziyang. This was a tone that had never been used before. Moreover, between the lines, it always gave people the feeling of a little girl acting coquettishly to her lover. This definitely wasn't Murphy. Yang Yi was too familiar with Murphy. With her personality, How could she act coquettishly? It shouldn't be Mo Xiaowan either. These days Yang Yi had been chatting with Murphy. He knew that Mo Xiaowan was in control of her email account. She usually used it to deal with work. But Mo Xiaowan had never been so disgusting. Although this woman didn't treat Yang Yi well, and she was also a bit pretentious, she was definitely a proud and arrogant person. Her coldness came from her bones, which was exactly the opposite of Mo Fei. She probably wouldn't be able to act like a spoiled child in front of Mu Xiang. More importantly, when Mo Xiaowan sent him an email without Murphy's knowledge, she didn't act coquettishly like this. There's a problem. Yang Yi frowned and looked at the attachment on the computer. It was an electronic authorization letter from the Copyright Association. It indicated that the right to use the song was not authorized to Murphy, but to Tianmei Entertainment Company. He picked up his phone and dialed Mo Xiaojuan's number, not caring what time it was. The phone rang for a long time before it was picked up. In the end, Mo Xiaojuan's vague scolding came crashing down on him. "Hey, who is it? Did you see what time it is? I want to sleep." Sure enough, Mo Xiaowan didn't remember Yang Yi's phone number. In the past, she probably didn't want to remember because she found it disgusting. Now she probably didn't need it and forgot. "I'm Yang Yi." Yang Yi had to introduce himself. If he didn't say anything, Mo Xiaowan would probably hang up. "Hey brother-in-law, why are you calling me in the middle of the night? You have money?" Mo Xiaowan asked excitedly. Now, she was looking forward to Yang Yi's money to start a company. "It hasn't arrived yet. I'll have to wait a few days." Yang Yi was referring to the money from selling the film rights of the 2 books. "Oh." Mo Xiaowan was disappointed when she heard that. She gave a perfunctory reply. "I wanted to ask you, did you guys go back to the company today?" Yang Yi asked. "We went back to talk to Sister Ling." Mo Xiaowan said lazily. However, since the conversation had started, Mo Xiaowan continued. "This woman has a problem. I don't know what she's doing. She clearly said that she would release a new album for Sister Fei once we gathered 12 songs. But she dragged it out and said that we'll talk about it tomorrow. But that's good. Tomorrow I want to see their faces and let everyone be shocked. It's only 12 songs. I can gather them all." Mo Xiaowan said proudly. Yang Yi roughly understood. He casually said a few words and hung up. When Mo Xiaowan hung up, she was still a little confused. She muttered to herself. "Is there a problem? This person. Who would call their sister-in-law in the middle of the night? Could it be?" After Yang Yi put down his phone, he coldly looked at the email on his computer. Murphy's situation was not good. The people in the company were scheming against each other, and she was also being dealt with by despicable means. Fortunately, the other party had bumped into him, and had been careful. He had to quickly earn money and let Mo Xiaowan set up the studio. He had to save Murphy from the sea of bitterness as soon as possible. Of course, the first thing to do was to think of a way to fight back. They actually dared to trick my Murphy. Yang Yi decided that he would not let them have an easy time. Immediately, Yang Yi had an idea. However, he had to buy a new SIM card tomorrow. Chapter 160. Early in the morning, Yang Yi was confused by Shi. The little girl was very angry when she got up. She hugged her father's neck tightly and cried. She was so sad that she couldn't control herself. "What's wrong? Tell me, why are you crying?" Yang Yi comforted her with a headache and asked in confusion. After a while, Shi sobbed in her father's arms and said, My sweetheart is missing." Sweetheart was missing. When did that happen? Yang Yi remembered that when he came back from exercise in the morning, he made cat food and fed the kittens on the balcony. When he called them, they ran out from every corner. "How is it missing? Aren't they fine at home?" Yang Yi asked. I saw sweetheart leave in a car," the little girl said with tears in her eyes and a pout. Yang Yi understood. He smiled and rubbed his daughter's little head and said, "That's because you were dreaming. Come, now that you're awake, Dad will take you to see the kittens." In the living room, Yang Yi smiled and gently held Shishi's little hand. He pointed and said, "Come, Shishi, look, aren't the kittens playing over there?" The big little gray climbed up to the top of the cat tree and reached out to play with the hanging fluffy ball. But Shidu was docile. It lay on the middle, squinting its eyes and not moving. Shishi opened her big red and swollen eyes and looked carefully for a while. She felt wronged again. "My sweetheart is not here, it's missing." Yang Yi looked at his daughter's big eyes and said quickly, "No, sweetheart must be at home. Come, Dad will look for it for you." In the past few days, Yang Yi had bought cat books to read. He almost understood the habits of cats, so he went to those small corners to look for it. After a while he found it. "Shishi, come here. Look, Xiao Guai is here." Yang Yi half knelt on the ground and waved at Shishi with a smile. The little girl was overjoyed. She quickly wiped her tears and ran over. Sure enough, she saw the kitten that had drilled into the small gap between the armrest of the sofa. The little guy was still secretly observing with his sparkling eyes. Xiao Guai, come out quickly. You almost scared me to death." Shishi pouted and called out. As Shishi had played with the kitten for a long time, Xiao Guai still came out when it saw her. Fortunately, Yang Yi didn't let go of these blind spots when he was cleaning at home, so the kitten didn't get any dust on its body. Otherwise, Yang Yi would never let Shishi hold the kitten. Yang Yi couldn't help but smile at the sight of Shishi hugging Xiao Guai so happily as if she had accomplished something great. Tianmei Entertainment. Today was the regular meeting for the week. Unless they couldn't leave, almost all the managers, including some artists who didn't have any jobs, had returned to the company to prepare for the meeting. Mo Xiaowan was also in Mo Fei's office, helping Mo Fei with her hair. "You have to dress up beautifully today, and then appear on the stage in a dazzling manner. You have to blind their dog eyes." Thinking about how those people had called Murphy an old woman, Mo Xiaowan was very angry. Of course, Mo Xiaowan wouldn't tell Murphy about these unhappy things. However, Murphy was a little absent-minded. After Mo Xiaowan was done, she picked up her phone and couldn't wait to open the message that had just rung. To be exact, it was a multimedia message. Mo Xiaowan saw it and pursed her lips unhappily. She felt that the daily PDA was really too much for her. "Brother-in-law sent you something again. Is it a comic this time? Or a love letter?" Actually, there was no need to ask. Looking at Murphy's happy smile, Mo Xiaowan knew that it was a comic. Yesterday Yang Yi had sent a comic. Mo Xiaowan had seen it before. It was a little person holding up a crab, and the crab's pincers were in the shape of two hearts. The style was very rough and there was nothing redeeming about it. But with Yang Yi's handwritten words at the bottom, "Even a crab is in the shape of love for you," Mo Xiaowan felt that it was so mushy that she was about to have goosebumps. Let alone Mo Xiaowan. No one in this world had seen such an emoticon style before, so it looked very fresh. Of course, this kind of straightforwardness was also quite surprising. What would it be today? Mo Xiaowan originally refused to eat dog food, but she couldn't help but go over to take a look. Murphy happily shared it with her. She saw that it was still the ugly little person. This time, 2 dots were drawn as nostrils, and it looked even uglier. However, the little person's head was drawn with different sizes of hearts, and it was even painted with a pink color. "Breathing the air of love for you every day." Mo Xiaowan read out the beautiful fountain pen words below and couldn't help but learn a northeastern dialect. "Oh my God, this person, is there no end to it?" Murphy covered her mouth and snickered at the side. Mo Xiaowan pouted and stuffed the phone back to Murphy. She said unhappily, I'm not looking anymore. You two can continue being lovey-dovey there. I'm speechless, I'm so disgusted by you two." Murphy giggled. In order not to agitate her single cousin, she didn't respond. However, she liked it very much. During this period, Yang Yi had been writing to her, and she kept all the things he sent her. She often secretly looked at them, and she felt full of energy all day long. Mo Xiaowen, what else can I do? With this cousin, I'm also very desperate to eat dog food every day. Ding dong. At this moment, Mo Xiaojuan's phone received a text message. Of course, Mo Xiaowan wouldn't receive any romantic text messages from men. Most of them were work-related. So Mo Xiaowan subconsciously picked up her phone and glanced at it. It was an unfamiliar number. However, the content of the message shocked her. I'm Mu Xiang. Open the email below and look at my new email. Mu Xiang sent her a text message. How did Mu Xiang know her number? Oh yes, it was in her signature at the bottom of her previous emails. But why did Mu Xiang suddenly want her to look at the email? And he even gave her a new email and password. Mo Xiaojuan's head was full of question marks. Xiaowan, are you done? We have to go to the meeting. Murphy looked at the time and said. Mo Xiaowan sat in front of the computer and bent down to turn it on. Why are you turning on the computer? Murphy was confused. Mo Xiaowan waited for the computer to turn on and said unhappily, Sis, why are you in such a hurry? Every time we have a meeting, you're always the first to arrive. Don't you look like a big sister? What's a big sister? A big sister is someone who wants everyone to wait for her, and has to put on airs. Murphy shook her head and said, No, I don't like to make others wait for me. Also, why do I have to put on airs as a big sister? Then I don't want to be a big sister. Mo Xiaowan rolled her eyes. She couldn't continue chatting with her cousin who was sometimes as stubborn as a cow. Chapter 161. Just as Murphy was about to go to the meeting, a familiar customer came to Yang Yi's coffee shop. Brother Yang I Fatty Guar am back. Guazi, who was wearing a green military uniform, shouted excitedly as he pushed open the glass door. Yang Yi smiled and nodded in response. She waved at Guazi happily. Uncle Gua, come here, let me show you my little Guai. Guazi just realized that there were 3 more kittens in the shop. He was also someone who likes small animals, so he ran over and sat on the sofa, playing with the kittens with Shishi. This is little Guai, yours is Papa's Dodo. Shishi pointed at the little blue cat in Guazi's hand that was twisting restlessly. Shishi also enthusiastically took out her little Guai and let Guazi touch it. She even looked at Guazi eagerly, wanting him to praise her kitten. You've gotten a lot more tanned. Yang Yi made a cup of coffee for Guazi and said casually. Hee, of course I went to Beijing to shoot a movie. Every day I was exposed to the sun and rain. Sigh, Brother Yang, you don't know how hard it was. Guazi complained. Tomorrow afternoon, I'll be dragged to military training. Sigh, I didn't come back for nothing. Yang Yi smiled and said, Isn't it good to get a bit more tanned? You're always so delicate. How can a man be so delicate? Also, I don't think you're tanned enough. It's good that you'll be worn down during military training. Guazi rolled his eyes. He seriously doubted Yang Yi's taste. Actually, Brother Yang, I came to report yesterday, but I didn't come to play with you last night. Do you know why? Guazi said excitedly. Guess where I went? Where did you go? Yang Yi was unmoved. You're not even guessing, how boring. Guazi felt very unhappy. However, he quickly adjusted himself and immediately said with a smile, I went to the bar to play and pestered a senior sister. She was working part-time at the bar, so I followed her and became her bodyguard. Are you going to have fun? Yang Yi raised his head and looked at Guazi. With your skills, who can you beat? He's even a bodyguard. If Guazi could understand that phrase, he would definitely shout, Don't expose me, my brother. After finishing his coffee, Guazi had no intention of staying for dinner. He chuckled and said, All right, Brother Yang, I still have to help senior sister welcome the new students. I won't chat with you anymore. See you when I come back from military training. Although Guazi could be considered a warm-hearted person, his so-called helping senior sister welcome the newcomers was definitely not wholeheartedly helping. What else could there be? Of course, he wasn't referring to Ding Xiang. Ding Xiang was dark and skinny. She didn't fit Guazi's aesthetic standards. His goal was, of course, the Film Academy, Music Academy, and other schools with a high proportion of female students. Taking advantage of the new students' enrollment, he had to quickly determine the distribution of the new students' resources. Although, in terms of age, they were all his older sisters. At Tianmei's conference room, Murphy and Emo Shaowan walked in at about the same time. There were quite a few people present, and there were also some empty seats. Sister Ling naturally hadn't arrived yet. Emo Fei's appearance still caused a small sensation. There were some small artists who looked at her with admiration, and there were also some people who had complicated expressions in their eyes. Among them was Zhen Zhen, a young, beautiful, and delicate female singer of the new generation. She was staring at Emo Fei with longing in her eyes. There was also a trace of jealousy hidden deep within. Yesterday, Jian Chua had already told her about the matter. After Zhen Zhen heard Murphy's demo, she was so jealous that she almost wanted to throw her recordings into the trash can. The difference was too big. If there was only one good song, it would be fine. But with 12 songs, every one of them was a masterpiece. How could others live? I'll try my best to get Coming Across the Ocean to See You, and a few other songs for you, Jian Chua comforted her. Zhen Zhen looked at her manager and asked ambitiously, "Why don't you snatch all of them? Anyway, snatching 1 or 2 songs is the same as snatching all of them." Of course, it was good to think about it. Zhen Zhen's position wasn't stable yet. There was a group of people coveting it behind her. Jian Chua also used the same words to persuade Niu Meiling to dispel Zhen Zhen's thoughts. But now, looking at Murphy, Zhen Zhen couldn't help but feel jealous. Why don't I have a good fan? Why does she get all the good things? Zhen Zhen's gaze and some people's whispers didn't affect Murphy. She sat in her seat as if she didn't feel anything. Emo Shaowan sat behind her with a briefcase tightly clamped between her legs. Not long after, Niu Meiling arrived. She had a meeting as usual and talked about the company's recent situation and achievements. She also praised some of the small stars who had made breakthroughs. Sister Ling's public praise was sometimes more useful than winning some awards. Looking at their excited expressions, Emo Shaowan secretly curled her lips. "You've never seen the world." Just as Emo Shaowan was waiting anxiously and wanted to ask if she should talk about Murphy's new album, Niu Meiling finally said, "Let's talk about Murphy's new album now." Murphy's new album. Didn't it just come out? Many small stars and managers who weren't qualified to hear the news were suddenly in an uproar. They looked at each other excitedly and started discussing. Ahem. Quiet. This time, Niu Meiling interfered. "The main reason I gave Murphy a new album was because I promised before that as long as Murphy could save up 12 songs, I would agree to give her the resources to produce a new album. I didn't expect Murphy to be so capable. She actually found Mu Xiang and wrote 12 songs for her." Tisk. Niu Meiling's tone was a little cold. She even seemed to be mocking and ridiculing. "Mu Xiang. She only wrote 2 songs for Chenny Jia and 12 songs for us. Every one of them is wonderful. Mu Xiang." At this moment, after Niu Meiling's reminder, everyone remembered the meaning of this name. Suddenly there was another uproar. The way they looked at Emo Fei was filled with admiration, shock, and of course, envy, jealousy, and hatred. Niu Meiling waited for everyone to quiet down a little before she laughed and said, "I, Niu Meiling, am famous in the industry for being a man of my word. Since I've agreed to something, I can't go back on my words, right?" Murphy sat there and smiled. She felt that this Sister Ling was still the same person she knew. She still treated her well. "My dear sister, you're such a sweet and naive girl." Emo Shaowan, who was sitting behind, saw Murphy's reaction clearly. She couldn't help but secretly curl her lips. It's about time for her to give herself away, right? Sure enough, Mo Shaowan, who had been watching from the corner of her eye, stood up. "Sister Ling, I'm sorry. Have a few words to say." "What does Jian Chao want to say?" Jian Chua smiled slightly, looked around and said, "Yesterday, I listened to Emo Fei's demo with Sister Ling. What Sister Ling said was not wrong at all. These 12 songs, each one of them is very exciting. It can be said that any one of these songs can be the main title of any album under Tianmei. Then, isn't it a bit of a waste to put all 12 songs on one album? Jian Chao revealed her true intentions. She ignored Murphy's shocked expression and said to Niu Meiling, "Sister Ling, there are so many people in our company who are looking forward to releasing a new album to make a name for themselves, including our Xinjian. Xinjian is also taking jobs day and night. We just want to see when we can make a name for ourselves. Why don't we allocate our resources reasonably and divide these 12 songs among ourselves and give our company a few more big stars? Isn't that a better thing?" Jian Chua smiled. Chapter 162. What do you mean? Niu Meiling asked. How do we split it? Sister Ling's reaction wasn't to reprimand, but to be more interested in understanding. Mo Fei was so surprised that she only looked at Niu Meiling closely. She still had a glimmer of hope that Sister Ling might object later. What I mean is, isn't our Xinjian also preparing her new album? Why don't Xinjian take out 3 or 4 songs from her album and exchange it with Murphy? Jian Chao smiled. Anyway, there are so many classic songs. It doesn't matter if there are a few missing, but it will be of great help to our Xinjian. Zhan Muqian stood up cooperatively with a warm smile on his face. He smiled intimately. Zhan wants to thank Sister Murphy for her help. Help your head. Mo Xiaowan vomited in her heart. She felt that this woman was really hypocritical. She even acted out a palace drama. As soon as Zhan Muqian's voice fell, several agents who had already discussed this matter with each other also stood up one after another and began to compete for songs for their artists. One song after another. It was as if Mo Fei had opened a supermarket here. Our Yu hasn't released an album yet, but it's scheduled for next year. Can you leave a song for our Yu? When our Yu becomes famous, she will definitely be grateful to everyone. Even though they hadn't made an agreement, some small artists' agents couldn't help but speak up. Everyone quiet down. If we decide to do this, the company will definitely allocate these resources reasonably. Even if we can't, we can ask Mr. Mu Xiang to write a few more songs for us. Niu Meiling smiled with a red face. Finally, she seemed to have thought of Murphy. She turned her head and looked at Murphy. She smiled and asked, "Murphy, what do you think of Jian Chao's proposal? Of course, the company won't treat you unfairly. We will do our best to help you collect songs and fill the remaining gaps." Murphy's pretty face seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. Her entire person exuded a cold aura. She really didn't expect that Sister Ling wouldn't speak up for her. No. Murphy stared at Sister Ling for a long time before saying word by word, "This is my song." Jian Chua laughed. "Yes, it's your song, but aren't you also part of the company? You have to listen to the company's arrangements. Besides, the company didn't say that they won't release an album for you. If you take a step back, won't the company give you more resources to help you make the album better and do more publicity?" Murphy is so angry that she has clenched her fists under the table. She is not the kind of person who likes to quarrel with people loudly. Otherwise, she will really open her mouth to scold. How shameless! Mo Xiaowan scolded on her behalf. Mo Xiaowan, who are you talking about? Jian Chua was caught off guard. I'm scolding you, and I'm scolding you for taking advantage of my misfortune. Mo Xiaowan stood up and confronted Jian Chua across the table. She shouted angrily, "These songs were written by Mu Xiang for our Murphy. What right do you have to snatch them?" Mo Xiaowan still wanted to continue scolding. "I think if jealousy is a disease, I'm afraid you'll all be lying in the hospital." Murphy tugged at Mo Xiaojuan's clothes, but this time she didn't let Mo Xiaowan give up. Instead, she said softly but loud enough for everyone to hear, "It seems like jealousy is a disease." She was very serious, as if discussing a scientific question. The conference room was silent. After a while, Niu Meiling coughed and tried to smooth things over. "You can't say that." The company is only thinking about the big picture and allocating so many high-quality songs. Murphy, you have to understand Sister Ling's difficulties. Murphy shook her head. She suppressed her emotions and said, "No, Sister Ling, I'm not stupid. These songs were not collected by the company for me. We asked Mu Xiang to write the songs, but we didn't use the company's connections or the company's funds. When did it become the company's resources?" Jian Chua scolded. "Murphy, you're too arrogant. Aren't you people from the company? Do you still listen to the company's arrangements?" Then she gritted her teeth and showed her unfinished trump card. "As far as I know, you didn't sign a contract with Mu Xiang. Mu Xiang didn't say that these songs were written for you." "Oh, how did you know?" Mo Xiaowan laughed and asked sarcastically. This. Jian Chua was at a loss for words, but she still found a lie. "You're not the only one who knows about Mu Xiang. We naturally have his contact information." Mo Xiaowan laughed and said, "Mu Xiang didn't say that these songs were written for us. Did he write them for the company?" Jian Chua braced herself and said, "That's right. We contacted Mu Xiang last night and prepared to sign these 12 songs with him under the company's name. So these 12 songs will belong to the company's resources." Jian Chua saw the surprise on Murphy's face, but she was disappointed because she didn't see the panic on Mo Xiaojuan's face. Mo Xiaojuan's expression was very calm, so calm that she felt that something was wrong. "If that's the case, Murphy, you'll have to suffer a little. But don't mind it. How could Sister Ling let you suffer? I promise to invest the most resources for you and let your new album become a hit," Niu Meiling said with a smile. Murphy couldn't tell if she was sad, disappointed, or desperate, but her expression was still cold, and no one could see any fluctuations. Jinjun was still very young. She was very nervous just now, but now she was finally relieved. She smiled proudly and felt that the situation was settled. However, Mo Xiaowan smiled. She turned around and picked up her briefcase from the chair behind her. She took out a stack of printed papers and waved them in front of him. "I'm afraid you'll have to take a look at this," Mo Xiaowan said proudly. "This is the electronic authorization letter that Mu Xiang sent to us, and it clearly states that Murphy is the beneficiary of the right to sing these 12 songs, and she's the only one authorized." Murphy was a little surprised. She saw Mo Xiaowan print out these printed papers before the meeting, but she was so focused on the things that Yang Yi sent her that she didn't pay attention to what it was. Mu Xiang sent them an electronic authorization letter. How come she didn't know? Jian Chua's eyes widened. She quickly grabbed it and looked at it. The format was exactly the same as the one she sent to Mu Xiang last night. Of course, it was also the standard template of the copyright organization, but Mu Xiang signed the electronic seal, and the party B on it changed from Tianmei Entertainment to Murphy, and there was an additional note. "If it's not our Murphy singing these songs, this authorization will be considered invalid." Mo Xiaowan kindly reminded her. "The copyright organization will punish the infringer severely." Niu Meiling looked at Jian Chua with a puzzled look, but the latter could only smile bitterly. "Well, we can discuss this with Mu Xiang, right? Murphy, I think you should take the overall situation into consideration," Niu Meiling said with a laugh. "I won't." Mo Fei shook her head firmly. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the conference room became awkward. Mo Xiaowan didn't intend to let Jian Chua go. She stretched out her finger, pointed at Jian Chua, and said with a smile, "This problem is actually very easy to solve. Doesn't Jian Chua know Mu Xiang? Let her ask Mu Xiang to write a few more songs, then we'll have enough to share. Does she need to look at our Murphy's songs so eagerly?" Jian Chua's mood was very complicated at the moment. She was bitter, angry, and helpless. But facing Mo Xiaojuan's provocation, she really had something to say, but she didn't know whether to say it or not. You're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.